Vicki Anderson.
Here.
Judy Casper.
Here.
Amanda Cherry Holmes.
Here.
Jim Davis. Deanna Hinton.
Here.
Riley Hoagland.
Here.
Kevin Hohenbaum.
Here.
Doug Holbrook.
Here.
Chester Norikis.
Here.
Dee Ritchie.
Here.
Susan Walke. She's excused. Kip Ward.
Here.
Randy Weldon. And Don Williams.
Here. Thank you. Okay, we move right into the election of chair and vice chair. Any willing participants? Anyone want to volunteer somebody?
I'll volunteer again.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Motion and second to name Riley Hoagland as chair of the budget committee. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Welcome aboard.
Well, thank you, sir. Do we have any
Sorry, yeah, you need to close it. You got to close the nomination.
close the nomination?
Yeah, I guess we didn't, but, all right, move on.
Well, we can.
It's all good.
Are you sure?
Yeah, you're in charge.
Who made the motion for, who moved?
Mr. Ritchie.
Thank you.
We have volunteers for the vice chair for the budget committee.
Anybody? Well, if nobody else does, but, no, go ahead.
I was just going to nominate Dee.
I'd second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have anybody else that would like to volunteer? Oh, no, discussion, I'm sorry.
Move to close the nominations
Second.
All right,
and approve Mr. Ritchie as the vice chair.
all right, so we have a motion, a second, and it's closed. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right. Hearing none, congratulations. We also have rules of procedure that I need to read, if I may have that document.
And Mr. Chair, while you're
It's
waiting,
the
just want
same-
to
it's the
let the
same
chair know I have to leave at 7 o'clock tonight.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Oh, it is the same. I have the other one. Thanks. All right. Rules of procedure. The budget committee must receive the budget message from the budget officer, which is in our case the city manager, review the proposed budget, hear public questions and comments, approve the budget for council adoption, and approves the property tax amount or rate of property taxation. As provided in state law, the budget committee must receive the budget document before the first meeting reviewing the proposed budget. The document must also be made available to the public at the same time. Once the budget has been made public, only the budget committee and/or the governing body can make changes. The budget committee may request any information it requires for review of the budget document from the staff. Generally, these requests are directed to the city manager or a department head. The budget committee does not approve new personnel, employment contracts, or salary schedules. However, these items are part of the proposed budget and have a fiscal impact. While the budget committee cannot negotiate contracts, it can adjust the dollar amount in the proposed budget that is available for these expenses. These adjustments would affect staffing or service levels. The budget committee can also review capital expenditures and make adjustments to them. Mr. Chandler,
Okay.
we are now at the budget message presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. Tonight, our goal is to present to you a brief review of governmental budgeting, forecasts of revenues associated with the governmental or tax-supported funds, of highlights of the budget that affect more than one fund, and then the governmental and tax-supported funds. Now, having said that, I had a very ambitious list, and I want to just request we scale that back a little bit. And I will be very pleased if we made it through the general fund, maybe the Lincoln Square Fund and the Agate Beach Fund, saving the street operations, park maintenance, and Visitors and Convention Bureau Fund for our next meeting. The general fund is the largest. It's the one that people seem to have the most amount of questions on. And so if we can make it through the general fund and perhaps the Lincoln Square operation and Agate Beach Fund, I'll be pretty pleased with that. By that time, I think the glazed looks will start coming over everybody's eyes, which means it is really time to end a meeting. Again, I wanted to discuss just for a minute how the budget is can be changed, and also a little bit of the format. In our previous meeting, we went through that pretty quick. The urban renewal budget is a fairly simple budget compared to the city operating and capital budgets. And so if any of you feel that I'm going too fast, please say slow down. You won't hurt any of our feelings. We have been working on this now for weeks, several months as a matter of fact. We begin the budget process really about November when we start talking about capital improvements for the next year. And so we're, as a staff, very familiar with what's in here, and we may take it for granted and just barrel forward thinking we've answered questions. So if there's any point as we go through each of these different funds that you don't feel like we're explaining it properly, you need us to slow down and explain something or answer a question better, please say so. Again, I'll be using the screen, not for something to be read because the print's too small, but more to highlight the areas of the budget that we'll be discussing specifically. And we will be highlighting things, but not going down into, like we call it, the weeds, the very detail of things, unless you have questions about specific items, and then we'll be happy to answer those questions. Just a brief review of governmental budgeting. A governmental budget is not like most budgets where you have just one budget. It's a series of funds. Each fund is meant to stand on its own. The revenues and the expenditures for all funds have to be equal. They all have to have a zero end to them. Revenues minus expenditures. And you will see that as we go through each of these budgets. One of the effects of having so many different funds is that you'll see a transfer from one fund going to another one. So an expense of one fund becomes a revenue source of another one. Some of the most common places you see that is with what's called our internal service funds, such as our vehicles. We have a vehicle maintenance department. It acts like a vehicle shop, and its customers are the rest of the city departments, and it charges for their services in the same way a business would charge for it. So you'll see in each of the funds a cost associated with vehicle maintenance. That becomes the revenue of the internal service fund or the vehicle maintenance fund. Okay. Any questions at this point? Yes, sir.
On that, real quick, on that vehicle fund, is that just their expenses divided by the number of entities, or is it charged equal? Say, for example, we're charging this guy for a transmission, this guy's charged for an oil job.
They do track the work that they perform for different departments. They track the hours and the expenses incurred, and the allocation is based on that information.
Yep, thanks.
Now, one of a new expense that we have this year is the eclipse. It's been very highly discussed. You'll see as we get to that, we have budgeted $30,000 to go towards the cost of the eclipse. As we have gone out and discussed this with different organizations, people have been very curious about what we're going to do for bathroom facilities and porta potties and so forth. So we have come up with a very good solution and to take care of the bathroom needs during the eclipse. So we are looking for employees that would like a very fun job, or volunteers would be even better.
Sign-up sheets in the back? Sign-up sheets in the back, right?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I would just like to say as a kind of an opening thing here, I thought that the 18-page budget message this year was the most useful budget message that I've seen in all the years I've seen budget messages. Had the most detail and the most helpful detail as well. After reading it, everything else in the budget just, reading through the numbers, it all clicked back perfectly. So
Thank you. I'm the budget officer, but the real credit goes to our staff. They're the ones that helped me put all this together, so thank you for that. I appreciate it. Some of the other budget highlights. The different funds, we have put them into some categories. The first is, we put them into 5 categories. The first is governmental. Those are funds which are primarily supported by taxes. And then we have, the next group is enterprise. Specifically, for those of you who have been here, that is the water operation and the sewer operation funds. Those operate the closest to a business in that the revenues charged, which we see as our water bills and sewer bills, are meant to cover the expenses associated with those funds. We have capital funds, which includes all of the capital projects that the city will be engaged in during the upcoming year. We have, I mentioned internal service funds. There are 3 of those. There's one internal service fund with 3 parts. One is for information technology. I'll refer to that as IT. One is for vehicle maintenance, and the other is for the mapping service, which is referred to as Geographical Information Services, or GIS. And then the final is debt service, and those funds are meant to account for the debt of the city other than the Urban Renewal Agency. So one important distinction to make is that sometimes it's easy to interchange urban renewal and the city and call them both the same thing, but we just finished the Urban Renewal Agency budget, so everything we'll be discussing at this point really doesn't have anything to do with the Urban Renewal Agency.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chandler, you were just breaking those down for us. I appreciate that. And then the first one, it was the tax category. And I just have a question. I was looking for the marijuana tax. Is that called out, or how do we see that?
We actually did not include any numbers on that because we don't know what to include. We were going to put a placeholder in that, but until we get our first payment and get some feel for what it's going to be, we didn't include it. Any monies that come in through that will just simply go into the reserves for next year.
Is there a, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I would like to know when you get that, when you get the check from the state, if we could actually track it. Can we see it? Can it be in the budget so we can, 1 or 2 years just to see?
We will have a separate revenue line item for it.
Okay, thanks.
So hopefully by next year's budget, we'll have some and can report on it.
Okay, thanks.
On that same line, is there, like TRT tax, is there specifics that where it can be spent? Is there a percentage that has to go for something or something? Has that been established yet?
No, it has not. It's not established by the state, and so it will be established by you, the Budget Committee, and ultimately the City Council with the budget.
Could we have, like create ordinances or something that
You could.
make, a specific percentage of this has to go to something?
You could either do it that way if you want to kind of make it a little more permanent, or you can just do it through the budgeting process.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea about how much? We talking hundreds of thousands? We talking over $1 million? Or do we have any idea?
The only one that I really know about is Toledo, which is administering the tax collection itself, and they have one dispensary, and their first payment it was a 3-month period, but when I talked with their city manager, he couldn't tell me if this was for 1 month or for 3 months, but it was $3,000 for that dispensary.
The only current revenue that we have that you might look at would be the liquor tax that we receive, because it's kind of similar, and that's about $130,000 a year. So
For two liquor stores, or for each?
in total,
Okay. Great.
Okay.
How are you going to present this? Are we going to go line item?
Not line item, but we will go department by department, and then I'll discuss the highlights of the departments, and then if there's any questions on it. So the first one will be, that we'll go through is the city council's budget.
I have a question on page 4 of the TRT collection and distribution estimates. The $40,000 for the TRT compliance reviews, who reviews?
We're currently contracted with our financial statement auditors. No, I take that back. We originally contracted with our financial statement auditors, TKW, Talbot, Cavola, and Warwick, out of Portland. They performed the audit in this current year. The people who did that have kind of created their own separate group, and so the contract's gone with them.
So we do not have someone lined up to see if we're in compliance, to see,
We do. I think it's a 3-year, I remember.
and then that is that the city is using the funds collected appropriately, or that the separate businesses are providing the correct amount?
There's both. The company that we contract with to look at compliance for the businesses are auditing the businesses and their collection to make sure they're collecting the proper amount. Our auditor audits how we use the money that we are collecting.
Do we currently have an auditor?
We do. TKW.
Is our auditor, so it's not in-house like you?
No, it is
No,
not
it's not
in-house.
in-house.
In both cases, they are outside auditors.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
well, you brought up the TRT. I just have a question, and it does relate to the budget, but what is the state doing? They were looking at maybe adjusting the percentages of the TRT and either making it more flexible or at least changing it somewhat, and I don't know where they are.
There's a piece of legislation that's going forward, and the League of Cities is taking a stance on this, that the TRT money after 2008, I believe it is restricted, or until 2003, is restricted to be used only for certain things, which is really tourist promotion. The legislation that's going before the state was asking if would loosen that up to allow it to be used for more than just tourist promotion. I had received a call from the League of Cities asking if this pertained to the city, and I told them that that we are complying with that law, that 1.5% is going primarily to tourism, and that the rest of our use of the transient room tax is dictated by our charter. They asked if we would want to loosen that up a bit, and I told them no, that we didn't, that the terms of our charter have worked effectively for many years, and they have been funding both our tourism activities and many of the city's programs and operations, which we'll get into in a little bit in just a few minutes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Sorry. Had a meeting with the Oregon Coastal Zone Management Association about this, and if I remember correctly, it was really just a matter of allowing the state's portion to be allocated for beach use for different parks rather than being dedicated to just what it is now, because they want more money dedicated to cleanup and patrolling. But it could be more than that, but that's all I was aware of.
Mr. Yes.
Last year, Debbie, how much money did we collect from non-collected funds on the TRT tax?
How much did we collect?
On non-reported funds
Oh, from the audit?
from the audit, yes.
I will have to bring that back. I don't remember. I have a report on my desk. I can bring that
I
back.
guess
to you.
what I'm trying to, the reason I'm asking is, did the expense of the audit cover what they retrieved from the audit?
No, it didn't cover the expense. However, there are benefits to the audit that are harder to capture. For example, I think having a program where you have reviews done encourages compliance. That's hard to measure. It's also a very educational piece. There was a lot of education that was done in this process as far as what, do you include cleaning fees, for example, when you calculate the taxes, or do you not, and what qualifies as an exemption and what doesn't. And so the educational piece of that was really good as well. So there are other benefits besides just the monies that they find, and that's,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chandler, throughout your budget message, you alluded to this item is part of an allocation from the general fund proposed by the city manager. Different items, part of $1 million. I may have missed it, so I apologize, but was there any place where those were captured as a total rather than in the message itself? Did you put them on an appendix?
You're going to have to remind me a little bit of what I wrote.
Well, underlined a few, but throughout.
Are you referring to the $1 million?
Yes.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
I was just looking, rather than
Yes.
having to handwrite them myself.
If you look on the, let's see, I do have that in the budget message. Let me find it.
Page 4 and 5.
Pages 4 and 5.
Okay.
So let me give a little bit of explanation on this. For the past year or a little bit better, let me jump back. When we annexed Rhodes End in, into the city, it had a financial impact into the city. And Councilor Anderson had asked us a year or two ago to estimate how much that impact was, and it was about $1 million. And so during last year's budget, we proposed to use that to build up the reserves or the rainy day fund. And so it was not expensed, and it has now become part of the beginning fund balance for this year. We have a healthy fund balance. We have a very healthy fund balance. We are targeting $6 million as the amount that we want to keep as a rainy day fund, with anything above that as being able to use as contingencies or to be expensed in the budget. So the question then became, what do we do with the $1 million? This budget proposes to use them for one-time expenses. The philosophy that we have behind that is to protect that as much as we can over time from being gobbled up into operations. Ultimately, it will as inflation goes up, but if we protect it long enough, it keeps us from having to find other ways to raise money or to raise funds for our expenditures. So with that $1 million, we're only proposing to use those in this budget for a one-time expense. And we are currently proposing that $150,000 be added to the economic development toolbox for development in and out of urban renewal. This is not the same $150,000 that we discussed before. The city council has discussed much about economic development. Right now, the money that the urban renewal agency uses is limited only to the urban renewal district. We are proposing to add $150,000 into the toolbox so that those monies can be available to use both in and outside of the district if there's an opportunity, whether that be the property rehabilitation or the loan programs. We also proposed $150,000 for expenses associated with, this says with a new logo and wayfinding signs. It's really wayfinding signs. The city is in the process right now of working on the creation of a new logo. Ultimately, that will come to the city council for their approval. And with that, will require some signage changes. There is a report called the Destination Report, which we generally refer to as the Brooks Report. That is online if you'd like to look at it, which has about, I think it's 52 recommendations on how the city can improve its image within the city as a tourist destination place. One recommendations that go throughout are wayfinding signs. When people come in, whether they're walking or driving, how do they get here or there, and then also standardizing those so that they're not just a jumble. So we have put in the budget $150,000 for those new wayfinding signs. We also put in $100,000 for signs at our entrance improvements. We have two very large signs at the north and south entrance. One of those signs is blown down and is waiting to be replaced with a new logo. Both signs will need to be replaced. We put in $250,000 for public art. The city has a public arts committee, and they have done a marvelous job with very little money. They currently have $27,000, and they are working on a new master plan and design details for public art. That is expected to be done in December. And what we did not want to do was to say, thank you, now we'll see you in about 5 years when we have enough money to do something with it. So we are proposing to put $250,000 towards that. To give you an example of what that will accomplish, if you are looking at a statue, a bronze statue, life-size bronze statue of an individual, that would be about $50,000 for the cost of a statue. And then we are proposing to add $350,000 for street overlays for the continuing of our overlay projects. Now, one thing about Oregon law, it prohibits me from coming and talking about the budget with the budget committee. Normally, I shouldn't say normally, what I would have liked to have done is to come and have these discussions with you before we actually put it into the budget. So I'm not anticipating that this is the final word and the final say on it, but it's actually more of a beginning point. The real recommendation that we have for the use of these funds is that you do not use them for ongoing operations or to creating new operations, but that you use these for one-time expenditures. Now, we will get into a lot more detail on that when we get into the budget forecast.
Mr. Chair?
Please, Deanna, please.
Okay. I'm curious about the second item, the $150,000 for expenses associated with new logo and wayfinding signs. Couldn't that come out of the BCB budget? It is for the tourism. I mean, we know where to park, to be frank.
No, not really, because these are street signs. These are not these are not a billboard type of sign or an advertising sign, although they do serve that purpose. But they're really street signs.
Street names and
Street names or public parking, this way to the museum or something to that effect.
Mr. Williams.
I'm trying to think back about the sign and entrance improvements. I thought the council wasn't in favor of that we kind of didn't like the idea of spending money on those signs, and I may be remembering this wrong.
I don't recall receiving any direction from the council pertaining to these. We do have an insurance payment that will cover the cost of the one sign that came down, but I don't recall having that discussion.
Do you recall, Chester? I could have swore we had a discussion about this, and it was generally unfavorable to the city being in that business. We just decided, I thought we kind of came to an agreement that that was not something we wanted to spend money on. Could be wrong.
Yeah, there was a motion, and it was defeated about making some new sign at the entrance coming up last budget cycle.
There wasn't budget then. Okay, thank you. All right.
That was $30,000 at the time, too.
Yes, sir. Oh, yeah. Let's just make sure you're pretty close to the mic. Are we going through the narrative then? Is that kind of what we're doing? Okay.
Yes, we can do that.
I mean,
if you'd
just so
like.
we have a consistency as far as going through.
Sure, that would be fine.
Mr. Chairman, before we do get into that, you know, I note with joy that there's people in the audience.
Oh, yeah. To be able to.
And more than just staff. I wonder if, and I apologize, but would it be appropriate to see if some of the citizens have comments rather than ahead of the budget that we could listen to as we go through this?
To be able to pull in our
into our thinking. You know, rather.
I would entertain a motion. I mean, I know we've done that before. If we've moved up comments from citizens present before line items, would that take a motion?
I'd let you exert your real chairman authority.
I believe that, I mean, that's what I remember, so.
So moved.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to move item G, comments from citizens present, before maybe the city budget review. Is that a line item, or is that a roll call? No?
It's a voice vote.
As an aye vote. All right.
Question?
Yes, sir. Deliberations.
Is that to move or to copy it?
I would like to move.
So there won't be if you say
at the
move,
end?
then that means there's not an opportunity after. That was my question.
Comments from budget committee members.
Well,
I mean, we
I'm
can,
fine with having comments before, but we should leave the opportunity to have comments after as well.
do we have, thank you, do we have an end time tonight that we will stop by, or is it?
No, whenever you guys start to glaze over and decide it's time to finish.
I'm just kidding.
And knowing that there's other meetings we have scheduled,
Absolutely.
that's what I was fearful, if there's some comments now, and then we can hit it, later as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now we can have a general comments from citizens, things that we write them down, and then more specifically again later. But I think,
Are there anyone that wants to make
yeah,
Is there anyone that-
yeah. I mean, I think
do
we
know
can
there
move
is
it up.
Somebody who wants to speak, yeah.
The motion was to move it up, not to copy it. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right.
Mr. Chair, there is one item that I will need to explain, because I know of one comments that a group wants to make, but it does need a little bit of explanation.
Will you come back and with them, or is?
I'd just like to explain it
Oh,
now,
now.
because they will build on what I'm going to tell you.
Well, thank you very much.
Over the last 2 or 3 years, we've had a very successful partnership with the Career Tech Charter School on the 4th floor of this building. And we have partnered with them in both projects upstairs and projects out into the open space. They had made a proposal to us about increasing our contributions to them for expanded service within our open space and parks area that would include both parks maintenance and also construction projects of benches and so forth and other items that would go into that. The budget in the past has been about $16,000. We increased that in the parks maintenance budget to $40,000. They have a crew of generally about 5 or 6 of their students that work with their instructors on both how to do the projects and then following through on the projects. Has been very helpful to us. It's a combination of both maintenance and new projects. And so I know that's what they will want to discuss, and so that's just a little bit of background for you.
And they are aware that it has been proposed increased to $40,000.
They are.
Mr. Chair, just for the committee, if this is on, or this seems to be explained on page 14 of the budget officer's message.
Okay. Ms. Hinton?
I just had a question. This is far-flung, I will say, but would they be interested in building houses after they learn how to build benches?
I think they can speak for themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler. I do not have a sign-up list, so I do not have a list of who would like to speak. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Yes, sir. If you would like to please come up to this and state your name, please.
I wasn't sure if this is the right time, but we had a presentation for you guys. Let me get it up real quick. Whoops,
I'm
sorry.
not sure. Yeah, if you could also state your name
Oh, yes.
and where and what
It's on the website.
organization.
I'll get it up real quick. I'm Jason Miranda. I'm a junior at Career Tech, and I've worked in the community. I'm one of the head scouts for Troop 47.
And I'm Sean Larson, the principal of Career Tech, here to support Jason.
Yes. As soon as it loads. Chrome when you need it. You want to go over the basics of our crew and what we do while I get it up?
Sure. So I think you got a little bit of a preview for what the crews do with the city. And so we're proposing that we sort of build on that next year as we move forward. Jason has essentially put this presentation together to show you what we do and kind of where we're headed with the crews. We've got some exciting things happening, so just want to share with you tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry for that. Got bit off throne because this one was different than the one I was practicing on. Okay, so natural resource crews. We're shaping students' futures. We're an outdoor, service-oriented program for our high school. We teach our students job skills and in science, technology, technical work like building. It connects our students to the local community. When we build a bench out there, they have that feeling of, I helped give something to the community that's worthwhile. We have 5 different crews which work in different parts. Our main ones are drone surveying, engineering, and wildlife sustainability crews. We go out into the field and work with our different partners, the Lincoln City Open Spaces, the Culinary Center, Schooner Creek Designs, the Forestry, and Camp Westwind. As a nonprofit school, we've always struggled with funding, and we continually try to seek funding from each of our partners to help our program run. Our project is to create a mutually beneficial partnership, as we have with the city, where you guys we'll go out in the field and help maintain these facilities and hopefully get funding for from you guys to help keep our program running as smoothly as it has been for years. Our mission is to give students opportunities and skills to follow their dream career while assisting positively in our community. Any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
I always have a question.
We have a question. Deanna speaking, yes.
I always have a question. How many students are there in your whole school?
We have 60. We have 30 in the afternoon and 30 in the morning.
And which one of those things that I think you mentioned 4 different areas. Do all students do all of those?
How it works is the students who want to be a part of this program have to sign up, and we actually bring them through a job interview as what a normal job would have. They get asked questions, they have to fill out an application, and you get accepted or rejected onto the crew. We have 5 different crews which hold 6 students each. So once we fill them up, we can't take any more.
And are you limited to that by space or budget? Or
It's more due to budget because we only have so many crew leaders that we can afford, so many rigs we can hold students in.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Just to add to that, we've expanded the crews recently so that we're able to offer the opportunity to more students, and that's really our goal, is that every student in the school would get this opportunity. And so each semester there's an opportunity to get onto a crew, and so we open that up to the students. And most of them take the opportunity because it's a great, it gives them a chance to get outside and develop some real-world skills, and we back that up with the academic piece. So it's both work skills and academics that they're getting out of the program.
I have another question, too. Are you interested in housing, building houses?
Yes.
Okay. I think
Yeah,
I found
I
my
mean,
winner.
we're always interested in new projects. Community Services Consortium, which is the parent organization for Career Tech, also operates a youth build program in Lynn County where we do build houses, and that's been very successful.
Mr. Ritchie?
Thank you for the presentation. I'm just trying to connect the dots, though. Do you need money? Are you
Yes.
here for money, or is there a line item in our
Yes.
budget?
Yes, we do. The crews are often supported through grant funding, and so we are constantly looking to provide funding for those crews to keep them operating.
Is there an amount you've offered up for this budget cycle?
So we were $40,000 was what we had, I believe, what was proposed in the budget
It is,
at this
so
point.
it is in the budget.
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Following up on that question, is that, you know, I'm sure you negotiated that 40,000 with Mr. Chandler. This is where the money gets dispersed. Are you limited by time? Is the 40,000 the maximum work you can do during the next fiscal year?
No, I don't believe that's true. 40,000 will fund about 2 crews, and those crews are going to be working on primarily city projects, but then we have other crews that are operating as well.
I guess what Mr. Ritchie was really asking was if he came up with other projects and money that your crews could.
Yes, we'd be interested in expanding further, yeah.
When he asks you how much, you know, you got to say a lot higher number.
I think we initially requested more than that, so, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation.
Question? Yes, sir.
Sean, how much did you initially ask for?
75,000.
And what would be the additional services provided for that?
Well, we had proposed also funding the culinary crew, which didn't look like that was going to work out. And we have other crews that are out in the field, not necessarily working with the city, that we could bring in and provide some services as well. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Define crew one more time. Is that one adult with 6 students?
Right, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, and the crew is being led by a crew leader who basically supervises and makes sure that they're following through on the project activities.
Paid staff?
Yes, yeah.
Make sure none of us cut our arms off, because boy, without her, we would have.
No, we don't want that. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Nice job.
Do we have anybody else that would like to submit comments at this time? Okay. Well, Mr. Chandler, Mr. Mamoni? No? You said no. You're going back.
So just to follow up a little bit on their proposal, as was mentioned, their original proposal was for $75,000. $57,000 of that would have gone to the parks and trails maintenance, with the remainder going to the culinary center. We did not think the fit with the culinary center worked, and so that was put out. And then as I went through the budget to look at what I thought was an appropriate amount, that's how we came up with the $40,000.
I'm at a loss of how the Parks Department will directly fund them. Why is it
I'm not
coming?
sure I understand the question.
You said the $40,000 is going to be added to the Parks Department in order to help them. So that we've increased that budget for them.
We
I'm
have.
just confused as why it's in the Park Department.
Because that's where the work is primarily done. It would be in the parks and open space, so it would become basically becomes a contracted services expense.
Mr. Chair. I have a question for you, City Manager. Could we explore a little further with them about building housing?
Yes, ma'am.
There's plumbing, electric, windows, and ceiling.
I have
I know.
questions for resources on the
I know
page
what I'm
6.
asking.
I don't know if we're going to go that way or not on the line items.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
could we go back to page 2 of the message, which we haven't
Oh,
completed?
yeah, thank you.
Is that, you're waiting for me, or is there a question? Sorry, I was
Just
waiting
go-
for
I
a
mean,
question.
But just to go, either way, to go through the narrative and then go to the line items to provide
Okay.
details to the questions that we have would be great.
Okay, let me cover just a couple of changes that we have. The first is administratively. As I mentioned in our previous meeting, we have moved the supervision of the open space coordinator position from the Urban Renewal Agency Department to the Parks Division of the Public Works Department. This budget reflects that change.
So is that an acting director for the Parks Department?
No, we have a director of our Parks Department. I think what you're referring to is a Parks and Recreation Director. And no, the open space maintenance would fall under our Parks Maintenance Supervisor. This budget does not propose to create a Parks and Recreation Director position.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
I was specifically looking for a Parks Director in the budget, and there is one? We do have one?
We have a Parks Maintenance Supervisor.
No, I'm not talking about maintenance. I'm talking about overall Parks Director.
That's what I was asking.
The parks, okay, let me break this down a little bit, because there's been much discussion about we used to have a department head that was the Parks and Recreation Director. They oversaw all the parks planning, all the parks maintenance, and they oversaw the recreation programs, including the community center. About 7 years ago, I think it was, the gentleman retired, and that position was not filled. Since that time, that position has been taken care of through the Parks Maintenance Supervisor, who is overseen by the Public Works Director. Planning has been done by the Planning Department. That would be planning for parks. And then the open space maintenance was done through Urban Renewal. As we have reviewed this as a staff, what I am proposing as far as administratively goes is that first that we do not hire another Parks and Recreation Director. The question that I have been consistently asking our staff is that if you have $150,000, would you rather have that for people that are actually maintaining the parks or for someone who is an administrator? And the answer that I have felt is that have it for the people that are maintaining the parks. Now, there's a couple of things that have taken place this year that are significant and affects the overall parks and recreation maintenance and supervision. The first is that the planning department and approved by the city council has completed the parks master plan. Okay, other than on occasion using the planning department to help design parks, their primary role has been completed, and it's now an opportunity to implement the parks master plan. As far as the maintenance of the open space, as I mentioned, we are shifting that to be under the Parks Maintenance Supervisor, who is then supervised by the Public Works Director. Now, as it pertains to our Parks Committee, I have felt for a little while that we have too many staff people that are actually involved with the Parks Committee. At times we've had our recreation director, at times we've had planners, at times we've had our public works, and at times we've had open space, and at times all of them have been involved at the same time. Because the work crosses so many different departments, I have determined that I will become the city's representative along with our assistant with the Parks Committee, so that we have one voice speaking for the Parks and Recreation instead of multiple voices. So,
And the rest of my thought was that I would not like to create, again, the Parks and Rec Director position, but I would like a Parks Director, somebody who, rather than yourself, you're a busy guy, and we know you are, but I'd rather have somebody that is dedicated to making sure that plan gets implemented, and that was the first request from the system plan and from the Parks Board, is that it was the first thing on their list was a Parks Director. And I wouldn't combine that with Parks and Rec. I think Gail does an excellent job.
well, under this budget, the person who will be directing the parks specifically will be our Public Works Director through the Parks Supervisor. And this budget includes, let me make sure I get the numbers right, $70,000 or $80,000 for some additional pocket parks, or the start of some pocket parks, $150,000 for a new park to be at the starting of a new park that would be on Keel, stretching between Southeast 3rd and about Southeast 9th. And so we've tried to include that, but I have not felt that administratively we need another employee to do this.
We can disagree, right?
You can always disagree.
And so in that time where we come to the Parks Department, we can suggest or make a motion to include
You can.
budgetary line item increase to include a Parks Director.
You
correct?
can.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Are we going to take all of these motions and, like we did last year, and just deal with them at the end?
We will.
Is that how that's going to work?
Yeah, for example, on this one, I will come back with some figures as to what the cost of that position would be, and then you'll know the budgetary impact, including where the money would come from.
If we're talking about employees or adding things like that, I talked about, I think there was some other, about making our court of record.
We will be addressing that when we come to the court.
Okay, so
I have some information on that,
Okay.
yes.
And, okay, the next, okay.
Okay, other changes, as I have mentioned before, on the economic development, one significant change that you'll see is an economic development. It's called a department, but it's really not a department as we know it, but it's a section of the budget for $286,737, and we'll go over that a little bit in the next few minutes. A couple of other things to mention. In last year's budget, we had included $100,000 for contracted services for mapping services to go in addition to our in-house employee. We have cut that back to $50,000, and the savings on that is actually spread out through multiple funds.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm sorry, just a quick question, Ron, if we haven't skipped past the employee section yet, on 2?
I'm coming to that in just a moment.
Okay. I'll hold my
Actually,
question.
I'm right there.
Okay. Last now then. The centrifuge. I don't know about the operation of that. Is that going to be a limited time? Is it an 8-hour-day operation? Is it something that goes on continually?
Ask our Public Works Director to
Just
come up.
one person designated.
While she is coming up, this is the one new position that we have proposed. We proposed adding to the sewer operating budget an additional employee to be responsible for the operating and maintenance of the centrifuge. For those of you who are not familiar with this, currently, when our sewage is processed, the water is separated and cleansed and then put back into Schooner Creek. The solids are ultimately disposed of, and for years we've disposed of them by spreading them onto farmers' fields. And when I say solids, it's still about 90% water. We are in the process of installing a new centrifuge that will dry that to the point where it's 20% solids and 80% water, which will make it like mud. And that sludge mud, instead of going to farmers' fields, which we're not able to do anymore, they've been cutting back on those, will go to a landfill. Ultimately, if feasible, the city has the ability to dry that to 80% solids and 20% water, which creates it into what's called Class A sludge, and it can be used as fertilizers in gardens and farms and so forth.
You say ultimately, with this current setup, we can go to 20% water?
No, it would require some additional
Okay.
items.
This is the first step of the process of doing that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, so in doing this, we're building a new building with a new piece of equipment, and so we were anticipating more assistance with that operation because it'll be running all day long. And so we're not planning on running it at night, but as we go along, we'll see how that operation works. And so we wouldn't be hiring this position right away into the budget. We'll see how everything's working out, but it is an anticipated need at the plant.
Okay, so the people we're buying it from are going to provide some expertise and training to the staff member, correct?
Yes.
And then
to all of our staff members, because everyone at the plant is on duty 24/7.
Okay.
We have 4 people, and so those rotate, and so people are on duty every 4 weeks.
Okay, so everyone will be watching this. It won't be.
Yes, it
Okay.
wouldn't be, the employee would be as a part of the team.
Okay, fair enough.
And
All right,
part of
thank
the
you.
whole operation.
That's what I needed. Thanks.
Okay, also under the employees, in our police department budget, we are proposing to create a police cadet program with the idea of hiring 2 part-time cadet positions that would work 20 hours a week. There's several reasons for this. We're really rather excited about it. You have to be 21 before you can become a police officer. And so what we have anticipated as part of our recruitment program is to involve those that are at the college between 18 and 21, where they could be hired as a cadet. We'd be able to help them through college, but also to train them up to become one of our police officers when they turn 21. Then we'd be able to bring them on as a police officer. So we're rather excited about that. I must admit that is how I went through college, as a police cadet, and during that time I worked as a meter maid, I worked as a jailer, I worked as a bailiff, and almost became a police officer, but decided that too many hours behind of a steering wheel was just not for me. So personally, I found it to be a great program that helped me get through college, and hopefully it was beneficial. I also worked as an evidence tech in all of those different positions, and so we're very excited about that. This budget also, we have a clerical position that works in the finance department. It is funded through the water and sewer funds. That position has been vacant for quite some time, about a year or so, 2 years. And as Debbie and I were talking about that, I asked her if she really needed the position. And she said with some of the computer upgrades, she didn't feel that she did. And I said, great, I'm going to steal that position and propose that we hire a part-time, half-time position as a public relations and information person that would work with me in helping with all of the social media that we do. We don't really have a coordinated activity. The VCB does, but the rest of us are just kind of shotgun approaching it. I had started a blog some time ago, and I'm finding it very difficult to just keep the time to do with this. And this would help us get the story out. The nice thing about it is that while there is no overall change in the entire city budget, it would have an increase in the general fund, but it would have a decrease in the water and sewer fund.
Ms. Hinton?
You know what I'm going to ask, but would this also include like a quarterly newsletter? Could that out to our...
It can include as much as we can pull out of 20 hours a week.
Okay, just asking.
Also, another significant employee part, of course, is the benefits. The benefits are a significant part of our compensation package. There's two parts that we really want to mention that go across all budgets. The first is the medical and dental insurance, which we are expecting to increase by 3%. Matter of fact, we have received those numbers from CIS, our insurance carrier. And then we have budgeted a 6% increase in the PERS, which is the Public Employee Retirement System. Now, due to some very brilliant budgeting of our finance director last year, that's less than what we were anticipating. Under the PERS program, first of all, the retirement has two components to it. The first is it's a defined benefit program where the retirees are paid a specific amount that is determined by the number of years they served in the community or in the work for a community that participates in this, and a percentage of their salaries. You probably all have read and heard what is going on with the state and with PERS. For some time, employees, which are now called Tier 1 employees, were guaranteed some benefits. And the most specific benefit that is causing so much difficulty with the state is they were guaranteed a rate of return of 8% on their investments. The state tried to change that. Twice it's gone, and twice it's lost at the Supreme Court. They are estimating... I don't remember the number, but it's in the billions of dollars that they're finding themselves as they are forecasting the future that they'll have to make up. I will bring this back, but our audit shows our portion of what is owed. The state did change, and most of our employees now are what are called Tier 2 employees, where again it's based on a factor of the number of years they are in the system, and it's 1.5% of their salaries times the number of years they're in the system, and there's no guaranteed rate of return on it. Oh, you're right. Go ahead and explain that.
But Tier 1 and Tier 2, we generally talk about together because, from our perspective anyway, they have the same funding rates. The last part that Ron referred to as Tier 2 is actually we call OPS or OPSRP.
Now, our contributions to the PERS are established every 2 years. 2 years ago, when we were looking at our budget, we felt that it would be very difficult to try to absorb a 20% increase in one year, which is what the forecast will be for the foreseeable future. Every 2 years, the state is estimating it will be about a 20% increase in your PERS contributions. So in last year's budget, we accounted for 10% of that. We also accounted for a little bit more because the second part of the retirement is more of a defined contribution, where the city funds a 6% contribution to employees' retirement. It works like a 401k. And we did a brilliant job of budgeting, which was actually mistaken that we counted 10% on that as well. The benefit of us doing that is twofold. The first is that all of the money that we increased, we didn't have to spend last year, so it just simply went into this year's, the ending fund balance for the year we're in and for the beginning fund balance coming up. And then the other is it meant that we didn't have to increase this year's PERS as much. And so this budget reflects a 6% increase.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chandler, on page 2, you indicate that budget increase for 17-18, 5.9, OP, SRP, 1.7, and 1.6, and that adds up to 9.2% rather than 6%?
Each employee will belong to one of these three. Either they're a Tier 1 tier, or general officer, or police officer. So the Tier 1, 2 employees will have a 5.9% increase, but someone who's in an officer program, like myself, that cost will only change 1.7. So it's not cumulative, it's which one of the three. And so your average increase will be the combination of how many are in Tier 1, Tier 2 versus officer.
And you also have to make a distinction between the rate increase on how much we pay per employee that Debbie just explained, and the overall increase in the budget. The overall increase in the budget is simply a dollar figure. It's 6% higher than last year. There is an indirect relationship to these budget increases, but the increase is based upon who in the department is Tier 1, Tier 2, officer, police, what their salaries are, what their increases will be. So the 6% is really a percent increase of the dollar amount of the budget.
Thank you.
Okay.
Would you? Yeah, just real quick. We only added one employee. Is that right? Did we only add one employee?
One employee and 2 cadets.
And did our labor? What was the labor difference between last year, including contracted?
I'll have to come back with that information.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Let's see. I am ready to move into the different departments if there, or if you would like, or if there are other questions that are associated with the budget message itself.
We're going to go through this message, correct? So, if, for instance...
We will, as you go through the different departments, yes. We'll answer most of those questions, I hope.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chandler, on page 4, intergovernmental revenue, I don't see tobacco covered in there, and I presume state revenue sharing is gasoline?
No, state revenue sharing is actually the cigarette tax.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
And the motor vehicle revenue is the gasoline?
Correct.
Okay.
And on that motor vehicle, the new license plate thing that they're trying to propose, have you been in touch with those guys at all? So we don't even know what it could impact in us. Okay.
Yeah.
And on page 5, under finance, regarding the transient room tax returns, auditors met with city manager to discuss findings. What were the findings in a nutshell?
I believe on almost all returns, they found something. A lot of
Something like?
something like you didn't include the cleaning fees in the calculation, or something may not match.
Okay.
You know, we did have some where we owed them, some where they owed us, and some no changes. I was pleased with how their review went. I was worried that it would be a surface level review, kind of just a sampling technique, because our prior person that did this, although he shouldn't have been doing it, he was very thorough about it. But I was real pleased with how thorough with it. They really dug in and found issues, and I think the training and education that they provided and review was good. Do you want to add any further findings? Sure.
So it was a learning experience for you, and it should go smoother next year? Is that the?
No, I'm sorry. I think there was some education provided to people who are filling out these forms. You've got, some of it's caused by employee turnover. You've got new people, in the other entities that are filling out these forms, and there's just some good education.
The city is generally in compliance.
Yes. There is one other thing I guess I would like to add on to this. The City Council recently adopted a new vacation rental dwelling ordinance that creates a cap on the total number of units in the R15 zone. At the point when those in that zone that have licenses that are under the cap can operate for 365 days a year. Once the cap is reached, someone can still get a vacation rental dwelling in that zone, but would be limited to 30 days of rental per year. One of the discussions we had with our auditor on this is auditing those once we reach the cap, and as it exceeds that, auditing those in businesses or vacation rental dwellings that are limited to just 30 days to make sure that compliance, and we would follow the same pattern that we are following with the audit of the vacation rental dwellings finances as well.
Again, on page 4, general fund, budget general fund revenue exceeded expenditures. Was that a result of the property tax increase? What was that a result of?
So, years ago, there have been some long-range financial planning done by the former city manager and the council, and they saw that revenues in general were not keeping pace with expenditures, and so there were a couple things that were put into place to help deal with that. One that happened was the urban renewal and releasing 80% of its tax revenues back to the taxing districts. So that added quite a lot of property taxes back into the general fund.
Right.
The second piece of that was the annexation of Rhodes End. That also added quite a bit of property taxes and transient room taxes into the general fund. With those two actions, the general fund was in a situation where the revenues were exceeding expenses, and I think staff and the city manager has been careful about not increasing our expenditures and not spending it just because it was there. So we are still currently in that position where our revenues are greater than our expenditures. However, if you do a long-range forecast, again, we're in the same situation as most cities and in the past, where revenues do not grow at the same rate as expenditures. So,
and we will get to that forecast in just a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
On page 6, I don't know.
Yeah, I have questions on 4 and 5 as well. And Deanna wants to follow up on the TRT as well. Thank you.
Actually, my question is about our billing process, and that it's done out of state. And I would just like to know what the impacts, good or bad, to the budget would be if we pulled that back to something local, provide jobs, and.
So
we currently have a group that bills our billing and collects our finances that are out of Utah. And I just want Debbie to explain that this didn't have anything to do with me coming from Utah.
This was decided, this was actually decided when David Hawker was still here. I think, yes. So our software system that we use, Cassell, is the system that we use. We import the reads, we generate bills, we post payments to it. Cassell has a couple years ago, we were looking at possibly also having a system that would post paper checks that were coming in, and we were actually able to reduce our staffing and finance by half FTE by doing this. We chose to go with a vendor that was affiliated with Cassell and already had an interface in place so that they would take the payments, and those payments that used to come to us in the form of a paper check were now coming electronically and uploaded into our Cassell system. That vendor happens to be in Utah, which is the same place that Cassell is in. So the only, the piece that we outsourced as far as labor was just the posting of the check payments. So it's a lockbox service. That was half FTE, is in staffing that we changed. It is financially better, but it is a half FTE of local versus having a lockbox service to it.
If you were to use a lockbox service, there's no guarantee it would be an Oregon service, because we would put that out through a request for proposal, and it could be somebody from Phoenix, it could be somebody from back east that would do that. The only way to really guarantee that it is somebody local is to bring it back in-house, which would add to your staffing costs.
One FTE?
Half FTE.
Half of the job.
It is.
And that would be for finance?
Yes. That position is actually paid for by the water and sewer funds.
That is the position that I have moved over to be the PR position. So if it either gets moved back or you have to add a new employee, and so we can work on what that cost would be.
I also have questions on page 4 regarding the franchise fees. In the line items, it has the 2014, 15, 16. It doesn't seem like there's a real increase. What sets the franchise fees, and if we are increasing taxes for water and sewer rates, do we also increase franchise fees for those people to use our?
No, the franchise fees are established through our franchise agreements, and in some cases are regulated by the federal and the state, the feds and the state. And so any growth that you see in that is through an increase of their customers or an increase of their usage.
Yes.
Memory serves, and that's questionable. When I was on council many years ago, I recall that at least there was a movement towards, and I think we adopted 1 or 2 such agreements with the utilities that were indexed to some inflation number. So,
I mean, if the city's growing and the usage is growing, and and these numbers are staying the same, then just like to look at that. How long are the agreements? Are they yearly? Are they?
We don't have a franchise fee on our utilities.
You have. I understand that. We're charging. So we're proposing a budget of, for these Pacific Power, CenturyLink, Sanitary, and Northwest Natural. So that's money coming in, right? So how is that established by state and law?
It's established through our franchise agreements, which are regulated. And so I can provide that information to you as to both what the percentage is and how it's established.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
It's much like last year there was a ballot number 97, charge corporations.
Okay.
This franchise fee is the franchisor is just simply a tax collector for the city. We've passed as a council on raising that last year on one of the utilities, simply because heaven's sakes, the government didn't need the money. But understand, it's a tax back through to the user.
Well, I fully understand that.
Oh, okay, that's where I want to make sure before you get.
No. I'm just curious as the process. I'm not saying let's charge more. I would like to know how that is processed.
Good. And we can get you that information.
Contracts, when they come up for renewal, they go to council, I believe.
They do.
Yeah. So like Northlink Sanitary, for example, every year or every other year, we bring that to council as an example.
Okay, Mr. Ward. To the mic.
Thank you. Mr. Chandler, can you make sure that we get those TRT figures back, the audit figures back for next time?
We can.
In addition to that, the violations, if there are any plus or minus, or what we owe or what they owe, and are they following their their business licenses? So we understand that, I don't know what was audited, whether it was this many days equals this much money equals this much tax, or where did they start their investigation? You said it was in depth, but how in depth?
So we
can bring that back. I don't think.
okay.
And are we having a CPA do that?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that really CPA work?
You mean, do they use
Well,
a
they're-
staff member?
They're comparing,
Equation, did you pay your taxes or?
no, but they're doing more than that. They're digging through the records of the company. They're looking at their statements. They're looking at their financial statements. They're looking at what they reported to us. They're looking at their income taxes and seeing if it syncs up. They're looking at bank statements and deposits. So, yeah, I would say, it's certainly a good accountant level, yeah.
Is that also something that we could have in-house at $40,000?
Just speaking personally, I kind of like the arm's length of having a third party do the evaluation. I'm not sure if I want to be collector and auditor. It seems a little self-serving. I think having an independent party gives it some validity and
To the
maybe-
standards that we would require.
Yeah, and it's also a check on us, that we're.
Mr. Chair, again, from this side of the room, you make me nervous every time you think about adding a public employee, or even talk about it, because it's much more than the impact of a public employee on this budget is much beyond even the salary.
Yeah, I understand PERS. I understand all that
Okay,
stuff. I don't have anybody else to talk to ask them, what do they think if this is better than that? I don't have anybody. Who better than she? Right?
So you don't mind if I just keep reining you in, because others around you may think.
Just because you're sweating.
Mr. Chair.
We do some reviews of smaller ones.
It's good to hear that
when
you
they're
think it's
closing
good.
or terming, but the more significant ones
And that's great. I'm happy that you like that. You know what I mean? It's good to hear your feedback over this expense. Is it good? And yes, wonderful.
The CPA firm has completed its review of the VRD collections. Is that what I was reading?
I
here?
think there's still at least a couple that are still in process.
Oh, it's still in process.
Yeah.
Are they going to report back to the council, which is in effect a board of directors, and they should be?
Would you like?
You bet.
Yes,
Love to.
absolutely. I will put it in an email.
Budgets aren't fun. Ha.
Actually, I really love the budgets.
I love
because
it.
Numbers
Are you kidding
add
me?
up. People don't always add up.
I love it. Okay.
Okay. All right, we ready to go on to the city council?
No. Page 9, please.
How about page 7?
If I may, one moment. If our intent is to go to a certain spot, are we going to then match that certain spot with a narrative and then go back and forth? Because I think the line items are alphabetically and this is not alphabetically.
Well, the thing to note is that each of these, so for example, you have the library, the municipal court, the planning, we will be going through the line items with those, that are associated with those. Now, it may not be in as much detail as the budget message, and so we can either go through the budget message, which should make going through the line items quicker, or you can just ask your questions as we go into the different budget
So if we go to page 9, we'll have to go back to go to city council.
My preference is to go through the message page by page.
Oh, we agreed early on to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's at city council, which is on page 5.
Let's continue.
am going to move us to, and we'll end up coming back. Okay. City Council. The City Council's total budget is $24,617. There's essentially no change from the previous budget, and it accounts for the services that are, or the expenses that are associated with the City Council.
Okay,
Do you have
what
any
page are you?
questions?
What page are you on?
Excuse me.
I'm on page 10. Page 10 of the budget section and page 5 of the budget message. Okay? So I will go through and point out where we are in both in the city budget section and also the budget message section. So I'm on page 5 and page 10.
I follow.
Everybody, does that make sense?
Because I thought we agreed to go through the message at first, and then,
We were just talking.
I know, but now we're here.
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair, I think last year,
Okay,
we
fine.
went through the message, and then we went through each page of the actual city budget. We weren't linking them in the conversation at the same time. I would, either way is fine
through
with
the
me,
message?
but the document isn't arrayed to do them both at once.
No, that is true. Okay. City Council's budget, I'm on page 5 of the message. The operating budget is $24,617, which is 0.3% less than the operating budget of 2017.
Yes, Mr. Ward.
I just don't remember spending all this money.
That's a problem.
We charge you for stuff.
Yeah. I feel like I'm looking at my checkbook at home.
Where'd it go?
That was it.
That was it.
Would that cover the filming and, I mean, the paying of the IT and all that stuff?
It does. It does have an allocation from the IT department, which pays for the IT support that you get, keeping the stuff here in the council chambers up and running, and the filming.
How come sometimes it's a transfer to the different fund, and and then sometimes it's a separate payment, like we say support?
So if it depends on how it's set up. If it's set up as an internal service fund, which information technology is, then that's done as an actual expense to the departments.
Okay.
And we have 3 of those, vehicle maintenance, information technology, and GIS. Everything else is done through a transfer.
Any other questions on City Council?
Mr. Anderson?
Mr. Chair, Councilor Higgins brought up numerous times her love for newsletters, and I just wonder if this is,
Hinton.
I'm sorry. Thank you, sorry.
You're in trouble.
It's the newsletters I despise. But my question would be, would this be a place where, if someone so inclined, a budget item could be inserted in City Council for a newsletter?
Yeah, if you're going to do a paper newsletter, a mailing, then yes, it would need to be accounted for in the budget, because we do not include that in this budget of a paper mailing.
But I guess my question, would it make sense under City Council?
Yes, it would.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
So would this be the time to propose an increase in the City Council budget to include a paper mailable newsletter?
Kind of. And the reason I say kind of is that I don't know how much it will be, so over the next 2 weeks, we will find out what that cost will be, we'll bring it back, and then during the final meeting, each one of these, whoever is proposing or a proponent of it would say, I make a motion that we...
Correct.
Correct.
So, could you bring us back?
I will bring it back.
Information.
I agree with Deanna on the concept of the quarterly, too, when you're talking about pricing.
My new friend.
Okay. other questions on the city council?
Does electricity cost anything on a website? You know, thinking of newsletters.
Somebody
I can even
stop
figure
him.
that one out.
Yeah, okay. That's, thank you.
I didn't recognize you.
Okay. Okay, the next one we have is the city administration. The city administration is $670,000. I need to follow my notes a little bit more here. And this, we're still on page 5. Okay, thank you. Expenditures are $63,270 over the 2017 budget. There's a few reasons for that. The first is the consolidation of the Human Resources Information Desk employee into the fund. When you come into this building, you'll notice we have a receptionist that is there. In past budgets, her expenditures have been spread out through all of the different funds that are affected by that she interacts with. To make that a little bit easier as far as accounting, we, instead of spreading it out over all of the different funds, we have included it in just the administration budget. The second part of this is that I had mentioned that we have reallocated the water and sewer clerical position to a public relations information position, a public relations information position that we have discussed earlier. Contracted services has gone down. The primary reason for that is that our recorder has been a bit overloaded, and so during this past year, I had approved hiring a temp to help her. That worked okay. We're finding it better to increase the hours of one of our part-time employees by 10 hours a week to help her, so that the contracted services goes down, but a part-time employees would go up. And then one overall thing that is just as a good point to mention is changes to our IT department, our information technology. Our staff has been doing a great job of looking to reduce the costs. Some of that has included telephone audits to look at the lines that we're being charged for to make sure we're still using those lines. Some of it has been working in the some new programs that we have installed that have significantly reduced the ongoing maintenance cost that we have to spend. And so you will see reflected throughout the budget the IT costs and the savings that we're seeing on these. Any questions on city administration?
I do. And the reason why we're just doing 10 years as opposed to making the part-time employee full-time?
The costs associated with the benefits. For example, under our current plan, I'm going to let Debbie describe this so I don't mess it up, medical benefits.
I understand it costs more to have a full-time employee.
It does in the benefits area.
Yeah,
It's kind of like this, though. Anyone under full-time, the city only pays for individual coverage. When you become full-time, you're eligible for family coverage, and the difference between single and family coverage is quite significant. So it's not, the medical is not a percent of pay, in other words. It's
Yes, sir.
I think this is appropriate time to bring this up, but since we're talking about city administration, how many employees do you have on staff? Not FTEs. How many employees?
for city admin?
Total city
Total
employees.
for the city
Oh.
and/or urban renewal.
And that depends a little bit on how you want to define an employee.
Non-contracted.
No, because we also use referees, we use coaches, and so that one I'd have to go back and figure that out. So let me get the breakdown on that.
It varies a lot, too. In the summer, it's more, in the winter, it's less. You know, we'll have an employee at the community center that may work, 4 hours pay period. So calling that an employee, you have to just be clear what it is you're defining.
Part-time versus full-time.
What I'll do is I'll bring back a breakdown that shows temps versus everything.
Is it anywhere in the neighborhood of 142?
That's a yes.
Yeah. Some.
Much less, though, right?
Some times of the year. That's
Much
on
less?
the upper end.
Well, it depends, I guess, on full-time versus part-time.
Yeah, it's not much less when you're
Full-time
looking at
employee is
full-time and
less than
part-time.
one FTE.
A full-time employee is one FTE.
Is one FTE.
Full-time equivalent, it's one full-time equivalent.
Let me bring down the breakdown for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Working under a different definition.
Okay. Let me get the breakdown so that you have that.
One employee is, what, 30, 60 hours a year?
2080 hours.
2080? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I'm searching for IT in here, and I can't find it. I know I've seen it, but I just want to ask the question about, I've received at least one. Okay, we're not there yet. Never mind, I'll save it.
Okay, moving on to finance. The total budget for finance is $801,457, which is $59,483 less than fiscal year 2017. The decrease of the $59,000 is in capital and in salaries and benefits. We have discussed the section on the $40,000, so I don't think I will go into that. The other area I would like to mention is in what's called merchant fees. It took me a year to figure out what that was. Okay, merchant fees are the credit card fees that we pay. Okay, and there is an increase that is associated with that for this year, and it reflects more and more people that are paying with their credit cards. At some point in time, we are not proposing this as part of our budget this year, but I think we could probably do better if we simply absorbed that into the rates or increased our rates to absorb that rather than charging a separate fee. I've heard this complaint a lot. It's the same one that I have. I don't want to use a credit card if I have to pay an extra $2.50 for that service fee. If that is somehow absorbed into just the rate, then I would be more inclined to use that. At some point in time, we'll bring that back for a discussion, but it's not proposed to change for this year's budget.
I have a question in that same paragraph. The text says, the financial firm are Talbot, Cravola, and Warwick, the city's financial statement auditors, have successfully completed the agreed-upon reviews of transit room tax returns. Could you define agreed-upon reviews, and why not all reviews?
All reviews, and meaning all 500 or
Correct.
plus?
Correct. Why were there only selected or agreed upon?
Because we didn't want to spend more than 40,000. So we got, we did.
And how were those
They
that got
asked for, and we
picked
gave them
determined?
some selection criteria, which they used to run a risk analysis on the different entities, and they selected the higher risk entities, and we reviewed their list and tweaked it a bit. So I think.
How many did they audit?
I'm sorry, I don't. I will bring that back because I don't remember.
Yeah, that would,
I think,
It was almost 20%, wasn't it?
I think it was close to a fifth.
You know,
yes, Kemp.
you know the documents that you need, that they need, and in the city, I would be, I'm a TRT person.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't object to providing once a year those documents that you're paying an accountant to go get. You can have them. And I'm sure a lot of other people would feel the same way. And it just always goes against my grain when it costs you money to get more than your, it's like a bad bet. You lose every time.
Hopefully, most of the cost is not in obtaining the documentation. The cost is in reviewing the documentation and comparing and reconciling between the different documentations.
Okay.
At our current staffing level, we don't have the capacity to take that review on.
But
I'm sorry.
The gain that you sought was actually not a physical gain. It was a perception, a fear that you're going to get audited, so you would keep you straight in line. How many times you audit is up to you, but that fear or concern that you're going to have to produce would be there.
Think of the IRS right now. There's, for the average taxpayers, there's less than a 1% chance that they will be audited. However, that less than 1% chance is a very good motivator. Part of the purpose for auditing is for collections, to correct anything, but the other part is to keep good people honest.
Yeah, you want to keep honest people honest. You know, I just
Up to the mic.
I made my point. And
I mean, we could ask for the documentation. I'm just not sure what I would do with it at a point with my staffing levels right now.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter if you're just the perception.
Oh, people think that we're doing something.
I guess,
You could put them down the grinder.
Put them down and then return them 3 months later.
I guess, Mr. Ward, if I was sitting in your shoes based on what you would say, then the question that I would really have for you as a staff member is, do you want us to audit in-house, or are you fine, well, there's three, fine with the way we're doing it, audit in-house, or not audit? And any one of those that we can come back and say, this is what it would take to be able to do that.
I know I would like an in-house audit.
I would rather it stay out of house.
Oh, absolutely. Keep it out of house.
Or if it's out of house, have it be all of them. I mean, what criteria does, I mean,
That would be huge.
Our original,
oh, what do you mean we can't afford it?
Our original
I had
thought-
asked the same question that Mr. Ward had asked, and asked it of both our finance staff and of the auditors. What's the cost-benefit analysis of auditing everybody? How much do we get for what would probably be about $150,000 to $200,000 expense? And you will not get that much money out of that.
And the inconvenience it would be for our merchants who have to deal with that as opposed to being able to do a snapshot.
It's a little invasive.
To the mic.
it is.
And
Mike,
it's a little invasive, which ruffles feathers.
Yes.
Not that we don't share the information. You can have the information. Coming
Tax-
in and
Tax returns are sensitive, yes.
demanding. Well, and we all know what can happen to documents. You don't know where they're going to end up. So,
Now, the other question that we had posed, and what is the right percentage? And that's still a question I don't know the answer. Is it 20%? Is it 10%? Is it 50%? Is it 100%? We've, again, looked at the cost-benefit analysis to say, what's the best percentage to audit each year? And in the end, we felt staying with where we are was probably the best route.
well, when Debbie says every single one of them had an error, that doesn't give a good feeling that everyone's doing it correctly.
Again, it depends upon the significance of the error. You know, if it's not very significant, is it worth the cost of increasing your audit? You know, if you're going to go 100%, you really have to ask yourself, can you get more revenue from those audits than the cost of doing so? And what we have found with just the audits is no, that you would not be able to get enough revenue to cover that cost.
Part of the rationale for doing the 20% was that under our ordinance, we can look back 3 years, and if we find things, we can look back 5. And it makes sense to me to have this an ongoing process where we do some every year instead of doing it once every 5 years. So if you have that and you cycle through a 5-year period, you will hit all of them. So that's kind of the rationale we approach this with.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Please don't misunderstand my questions as like I don't get a lot of stuff, so I'm going to ask the questions.
No, I
like,
appreciate the
please
questions.
let me know what's going on.
Okay. Any other questions on administration?
We're down to finance. Don't go backwards.
Are we back to finance? Finance, thank you. I didn't even turn the page.
We're hitting it.
Okay, any other questions on finance?
Thanks.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I was glad to see that the new payroll system was completed and went smoothly and that you were pleased with it.
Yes, it's working well. We're getting some nice benefits from it. And, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I had one question. Do you guys have a percentage of what your merchant fees are?
We do. I can pull that. I can bring that back.
I know there's quite a wide variance out there.
Yes, yeah. I'll bring that back. Sure.
Also, as you're looking at that there can be a variance between credit, debit, direct
Right, the
bank
different
draft as
types.
well, and giving people that option.
Yep.
Helps.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Before you move on.
Yes, absolutely.
Debbie, I'm just wondering, with this changes the systems and what the system allows in budgeting and finance. But at one time, when there seemed to be a move on transparency, even if the governor talks about it and forgets about it. But anyway, on transparency for us in the city, we always looked at the accessibility that a citizen might have to go through our website to look at some budget items or finances. And we know other cities have such systems. Albany, for example, was touted. Does this kind of system allow, and it may not be the system at all, but our access to information, but I'm always looking for a way that the citizens, if they so desire, can look at the city finances.
Our current financial system that I know of doesn't have a way to integrate with our website so that people can get on and look at stuff kind of like the city of Albany does. We had talked about this before and had kind of decided not to pursue that, although that was under a different administration and stuff.
That's why I keep breaking it up.
It's a new group of people. If you want us to look at that, I'd be happy to.
I'll talk to the chair later.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, are we ready to move on from finance? Okay. Our next is page 6, which is the library. There's a lot to talk about, and I think I would like to have Kirsten discuss this.
Before we start, I went to Roseburg, and there is like closing. Like they don't have even staff to do so. So when I saw 120,000 visits, that was incredible. So I'm so lucky to have such a great library. So I just want to thanks before we begin, because I had no idea that other counties and cities were struggling to even stay open. So I just want to, before that, I just want to tell you thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to just touch base on some overall pictures and one line item, two line items specifically, and then let Kirsten discuss her department more in detail. So the budget is $887,000, $189, which is $12,277, or 1% less than the fiscal year 2017. The operational budget, which is the budget excluding capital projects, is $882,189, which is $12,233 greater than the 2017 benefit. The increases in the employee benefits, and Kirsten will talk a little bit about that in just a few moments. Under the capital, we have included one item that is for $5,000, and that is to enhance our security system in the library. On this floor, there is a motion, and on the fourth floor, there is a motion detective system. So that if somebody is in, the alarm set, if somebody's walking through, it goes off. I found that within the first week I worked here, and it really goes off. And it's very effective and very helpful. We do not have that in the library, and we have found occasions where somebody may have fallen asleep intentionally or purposefully, and the library is, it's hard to find every nook and cranny, and so they have ended up staying there through the night, and so we'd like to add that security. The other thing that I wanted to mention that is discussed in here quite a bit is a program that is called Hoopla. Okay, Hoopla is a downloading service that provides electronic books, audio books, music, and video that can all be downloaded. It's based on a very unique premise, and that is that instead of charging you a flat fee for its services, it charges you on per download. So, for example, per download of movie, per download of book, per download of music, and an album, and like our regular electronic books and audio books, you keep it for a certain period of time, and then it expires, and you can no longer access it. The amount is $1.50 per download. When Kirsten first brought this to me, I was a little bit negative at first, but as they explained it to me, I liked the concept, except for the fact that it is not a flat fee. We have put in the budget $6,000 for this. If we have 10,000 library card holders, if all of them downloaded one thing, it would blow out our budget. It would far exceed what we were able to. And so you're left with either providing a service that you can't continue all year, or you're going to have to increase your budget the moment you get somebody who is downloading over that. So what I told Kirsten in the discussion is that we would leave this in the budget if she can find a way in which it can become a flat fee service, whether it's through Hoopla or another company. Again, the biggest problem that I had with this is it's an open-ended expenditure. It's not an expenditure we can control without telling our customers that, I'm sorry, the service no longer exists for this year because we run out of money. Okay, any questions on those before I turn it over to Kirsten?
Where are you going to say which one it is? Did you find a flat fee based one?
I have not yet. It seems that for this type of streaming service, right now, a flat fee does not exist. So it would be something that I would have to either negotiate with the provider, or we probably would not be able to provide it at all.
Because it's done now through Oceana?
No, so this is right now Newport Public Library and Tillamook County Library subscribe to this service. So their patrons have access to it and our patrons do not.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
And is this accessible, Kirsten, only in the library?
No, this is accessible anywhere that there's an internet connection, or you can download the material to your personal computer or device and then use it without an internet connection.
But it is only accessible through the library. I could not subscribe to this at home.
No.
And the library subscribes to it, and then I get it through my library card.
Is there a way you can set it up where it's a pay-for subscription, so it's the user is paying the $1.50 instead of the library?
Not really. I mean, we don't, public libraries, we tend not to charge for services. We see our.
Printing.
Yeah, except for printing. What we're interested in doing, I wouldn't want to provide this service if it meant that people were going to be charged over and above what they're already paying as taxpayers to use the library. In the way that it's worked in other libraries that have chosen to provide this service is that they set a limit on the number of checkouts that any individual patron can have during a period of time. So, for example, Newport Public Library restricts their patrons, I believe, to 4 checkouts per month. So basically they can do 1 a week. For a while they weren't getting much usage of the service, so they upped the number of checkouts, and then they had to take it back down to 4 at a time because they wanted to stay within the budget that they'd set out for the year. What I'm hearing from other libraries that have used it is that probably in the first year I can expect fairly low usage, and then as people become aware of it, they want to use it increasingly. But you can cap the costs by capping the number of uses per month for individual patrons.
One of the things that is actually, I think, necessitates eventually getting to this point, if they can figure out how to do the flat fee, I think it's a worthwhile service, is that through our Ocean Books, the current download program that we have, there's so few books per checkout that if I wanted to check out a book, I may have a month's worth of waiting list.
So
what we were looking at was how do we increase the availability of the books. Now, to your point, one of the questions that I had asked that we had discussed quite a bit in length is, do we want to add a service that you can already get? So, for example, Pandora, Spotify, all of those, I can get those for free and download music. So we began to look at, so the question we really were dealing with is what is the service that provides for this? And really it's the greater availability that we don't have through the Ocean Books program.
So if you're familiar with how most of the ebooks work with the library currently, they operate under what's called a one user, one copy model, where if somebody, it's almost like it's a paper book. Somebody checks it out, and that means that everyone else has to wait for it until they're done with it. So they have to wait 2 or 3 weeks, and then the next person in line gets it. And we actually, for the most part, we share all of our ebooks with the entire state. It's a consortium that is a statewide consortium, so that means that sometimes we have wait lists that are 50 or 100 people long for popular titles. We can purchase additional titles, but that's also expensive. Ebooks tend to cost more for libraries than they do for consumers. So if I want to buy an additional copy of the newest James Patterson for my patrons just at this library, that costs about $60 usually. Whereas with this, under this different model, this Hoopla model, there's no limit on the number of people who can access a title at the same time. So except for budget. So if 50 people wanted to all read, James Patterson at the same time, they could do that and they wouldn't have to wait.
So to be clear, the Hoopla system is not something that we're at this time going forward with?
At this time, no. I would very much like to, but I share some of Mr. Chandler's concerns about how we manage the costs. So I'm hoping that we can come to another solution. But I'd like to keep those funds in the budget as a placeholder in case I can come to some kind of solution and get this service.
And is that the line item? Where would that be as far as the line item?
I believe it's in ebooks and databases.
Okay. It doesn't show a significant increase.
I did have reduced some of our other database costs. I canceled some items that weren't getting a lot of use or any use at all, or were superseded by items that we could get through the state library.
And the $8,000 for that, is that the ILS system?
I'm sorry?
The $8,000 for computer software maintenance?
Yes, that's actually, there's a maintenance contract that we have with the company that does our RFID system and also the management software that we use for our computer terminals, so the thing that monitors people's time and creates new sessions and stuff like that. And so there's an annual maintenance fee for that. That's the $8,000.
For, in the safety thing with the $5,000 capital outlay improvement, what do you that's front desk, what safety measures do you guys have there? Do you have a quick exit? Do you have this, what we have behind here? Do you guys have a?
You know, we have, we've got a back door.
Right behind that?
Well, there's a staff entrance that's
Close.
just behind the front desk there. As far as, we don't have a reinforced desk or anything like that. The $5,000 would really be for what Ron was mentioning earlier, the motion detecting security system, so that we can make sure that we're not leaving people in the library overnight to their own devices.
Can you add a panic button to that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that we've looked at. We have our own kind of system of beepers that we use, but, we have looked at adding a panic button similar to what we have up here on the third floor.
During this past year, we have added that into this portion of the building, and it's a great add.
Is that something that we could look at for them as well, including this Kevlar backing for behind their desk?
We could.
Just to see.
Oh, is that what that is I'm kicking?
Yeah.
Oh, I wondered about that.
Yeah. We got those guys back there and this up here.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Going back to the hoopla, my thought is I agree with the overlapping Spotify, all that type of stuff, and I'm not sure about the value there. But I'm not concerned really about the user fee.
Can you get your mic closer, Randy, please?
Is that better? All right. So I'm not really concerned about the user fee so much, because I look at it this way: if everybody's entitled, if you get a library card, you can use it. So everybody has the option of coming down and get a library card, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I have the option to go use it in a park, and if I never use it, I'm still paying taxes to upkeep of the park and all this stuff. So, it's a choice if people want to use it or not. Everybody has the option, just like going to a park. You can use it every day, and you're not getting fee for it. So, I don't think that would really be a concern on my part as far as the user fee for the hoopla. But as far as the content, yeah, that's a different subject that might be a little tougher. Understand where I'm coming from?
I guess I'm a little bit confused by what you mean by user fee.
Well, he was talking about a subtype of subscription or having a person actually spend $1.50.
Okay. So, yeah, it would be coming out of it wouldn't be the patron who was spending the $1.50. It would be our library's
Would be
budget.
the library that would.
You wouldn't charge the patron?
No.
No.
Oh, okay. I was thinking you were wanting to charge the patron.
suggestion.
Oh, okay.
She shot me down.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
2 for 2.
If I may ask, Mr. Chandler, also, we don't have the actual budget for the 16-17 because it's not over yet, right? That's why those
Estimate.
estimated. That is the estimate of what they will.
Of what will be spent before the end of the year. So the third.
Oh, so okay, all right. Never mind.
But you're right, it's not done yet, so
Right.
we've just done an estimate on that. And you'll notice that some of them are just simply the same amount as the budget. On some of these expenses where we're not sure where it'll be, we just put the budget amount.
Okay. Question, Ryan?
Yes, sir.
Kirsten, can you address the change in telecommunications from 9,600 to 5,600? That's just about a cut in half almost on that.
I think, Debbie, help me out here. I think this is the line charges that we're not going to, because we're combining the city line.
No, it's okay. It might be 2 years ago they didn't.
It's because we had budgeted last year $5,000 to redesign the website. However, our new reference librarian is, it was web designer in his previous life. So he is we're moving the web design in-house. So I cut that. I left a little bit in case we need to contract some, logo design or something like that, but that's the reason for the $4,000 less.
Nice. I love it. I love all you guys. Let me just say I love all you guys. You guys are all great. Seriously, you guys are great. Let me just make that clear.
Are there any other questions on the library? Okay.
Thank you for such a wonderful library.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to now, if I can, take it out of order a little bit. I really would like to cover police tonight. There are some important things that we need to discuss that we should not wait until our next meeting.
Could we maybe take a 5-minute stretch our legs? You guys want to?
And
Out of
a question
the
that
dais.
a question also I'll have is just really how late do you want to go tonight? At the rate we're going, we will be here quite late. And so what I'm thinking is that as we finish with police and dispatch, then ask you to evaluate the time and see how late you want to go.
Well, I think, I know previous years, the first meeting we feel out how it goes, and then we find the rhythm, and then the next meeting goes a little bit more easier. So I think that's true. But if we're all good, you guys are fine.
Take 5?
Yeah. Let's take 5.
3.5.
3.5. We are gaveling for the moment.
Maybe shut the mics off.
Can you shut the mics off again, please?
Okay.
We got to turn them
Microphone.
Dee, will you turn
Mic-
them? Yeah.
Microphones are on.
way up?
Microphones are on.
It's not on. I'll show the record that he left at 7.
Hello? Testing.
Mics are on.
Good job. Thanks.
So do we need to show the record at some time at 7 o'clock, Mr. Williams left?
Yes, thank you.
I believe, I noticed it at 7:09.
Okay, thank you.
It was actually 6:58.
Was it? Okay. Well, okay. There were those who noticed 6:58. Thank you.
He should know.
So we're back together. So we're skipping forward to police.
Yes, we're on page 9 of the budget message, and thank you for letting us take this out of order. Couple of things that to note on this. The first is that expenditures are $144,556 greater than in 2017. Couple of things to note is that salaries are less, but overtime is more. And the reason for that is that we are down some police officers. We are bringing them on board and doing the training, but it takes a long time, about 18 months from the time anywhere from 12 to 18 months from the time we hire an officer until they're ready to be out on their own. So the result of that is that it has increased our cost in overtime as our current officers are filling in. As I mentioned, the part-time includes a cadet program, which we have discussed. Also included because of our hiring in the contracted services, we have included the services of TCB Company, which does civilian report taker. I'm going to let the chief explain a little bit of what that means.
Sure. So there's times where we get calls for service that necessitates a police report to be taken, but it's something that has very little investigative leads to it. So, for instance, overnight somebody went into somebody's front yard and stole their garden home and stuff, and we have no idea who did it. There's no investigative leads. Those types of reports can be taken by a civilian report taker. There's no investigative things to do. That leaves those resources that are trained to do investigations to better apply themselves to those calls for service that requires that technical side of things. So there's also times where there's reports taken merely for insurance purposes. Somebody was over at the Safeway over the weekend and they noticed a car ding type of thing. They don't have any idea which car they were parked to at the time, so we'll take that information so they can process their insurance claim. So it's those types of reports that are dedicated towards this civilian report taker under the contracted services.
Okay, a couple of other things to mention. Our police radio system, there are dead spots in the community where we can lose radio contact. Last year, we budgeted $20,000 to hire a consultant that would look at how do we enhance our communication system. However, the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office obtained a grant from Homeland Security to complete that analysis. So we have put into the budget a capital amount of $75,000, and that is really kind of just a plug number, so that as we learn what it will take to improve the radio system, we'll have the funds to cover it. So at this point, we really don't know how much that will be, but we wanted to make sure there was a number in there to cover that. We also have in there, we have been rotating our vehicles as they reach a certain point in their life, and it's been averaging about 2 per year. And so this budget includes $85,000 for the replacement of 2 vehicles. Now, there were a couple of questions that came up in the course of our, and over the last couple of weeks that I wanted to point out to you. The first was we were asked to provide a comparison of other communities in the police budget. So one of the ways we tried to do that was to look at how do you make apples to apples and do a proper comparison. So we looked at the budget to officer ratio. You have this in a handout that I have given to you. And that, I'm going to, Chief, do you have that in front of you?
I do, yes.
I'm going to let you go ahead and discuss that. The second is the reported incidents per population, and I'm going to let the chief also deal with that.
So there's been some discussion on how expensive our police department is in relation to other communities and stuff. If the cost of our police department is acceptable, if it's out of line based upon other types of police departments. And in fact, I've heard the comment last couple of years that our police department per capita is more expensive than Portland Police Bureau. So that kind of challenged me, I guess, for the lack of a better term, on finding out just how expensive our police department is. Not necessarily per capita, because we get into the discussion of what our true population is in a tourist community. So I felt the best next comparison would be by their annual budget. How many officers compared to their police department budget. So as you can see on the chart, Portland Police Bureau, their allocated strength is 950 officers. Take their annual budget, so you have a cost of roughly $200,000 per officer. And then Florence is $181,800. Newport, a little bit less, $180,000. Lincoln City is $159,700. So our officers per our annual budget averages out to that, or it's a little less than 40,000 of the total general fund budget. Not 40,000, 40%, I'm sorry. You're going to get off really cheap. So that's the purpose of that. That exercise is to determine how in line we are with other departments of relative size outside of Portland. Obviously, they've got they're a large metro department, and they've got a lot more resources, needs, and stuff that we do in our community. And then what I did also is did a comparison, or kind of tracking, not really a comparison, of our reported incidents. I couldn't figure out a way to get around the population issue on this one, so I went ahead and threw in our population. So the graph shows a slight increase from 2010 to 2016 of population, and reported incidents really doesn't track in that same nice little rise as the population does. So some years were a little bit busier than others. 2015 was the highest in that comparative, but 2016 has gone down a little bit. Some of that could be due to our staffing levels, because incidents are not only reported incidents to us, but we also categorize traffic stops, field contacts, proactive incidents as an incident. So as your staffing kind of goes down a little bit, some of those incidents will fall down a little bit as well.
Chair, question?
Yes.
Chief, could you give us just a ballpark of the staffing? You have allocated staffing across the bottom, but what was the actual? Just a ballpark.
So 2016, we're probably at 21 officers, actual. 2015, we certainly weren't any more than that, or any less than that. We may have been one or two more. I can get exact numbers.
No, that's fine. I was just curious.
Additionally, incident response, is that all 911 calls? Is that all stops? Is that only made by police?
As opposed
to calling dispatch and only fire and rescue going?
This has nothing to do with the dispatch. This is incidents handled by police.
Okay.
So a traffic stop, a bar check, a burglary call.
Where they stop, and, okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Chief, and I don't know, but I just ask, is in this budget comparison include the dispatch center for Lincoln City and the same for others, or is it absent dispersing the dispatching the police?
Are you talking on the agency comparison?
The number per, in order to what cost of officer?
That doesn't include dispatch costs.
Does not.
That's just the police department.
Do you know if the others, do they have like we do separate department of dispatching, or is it rolled into?
So I know Astoria is part of a consolidated dispatch center.
So their costs would be in their department then?
Well, so any of those types of,
Mr. Anderson, are you asking for us to do a comparison of the roles of the dispatch into it as well?
no, I
Well,
think,
I'm just asking if maybe we have a mixed bag that like Astoria's might be in there because they are consolidated, ours isn't, and yet I view dispatch as a part of the police department. You need something to dispatch.
so what I hear you saying is maybe Astoria, of that 2.2 million, 150,000 may go towards their consolidated dispatch center. So we're not,
Well, knowing ours is 900,
right.
I mean, that, I guess what I'm getting at, if you added 900 into our 4.1 million, divided by our officers, our cost per officer is going up.
Right. So this does not include dispatch costs. This is just operational law enforcement.
In Lincoln
police.
City.
For Lincoln City, for Portland Police,
Okay.
for Newport, Coos Bay. I'm not sure about Astoria, and I'm not sure about Florence.
Okay, so that takes us, so we are real close to apples. So
Yes.
thank you.
Chief, so in this, as you just explained, last year, you had 21 officers, is that correct?
Yes.
Or in this year? So you have the animal budget as for this graph, 26 officers by $4.152 million. If you took the actual budget, which is $3,788,000, divided by 21 officers, I get a number of $180,000 of actual costs, not a budgeted amount and ideal number of officers. So if you took the actual officers by the actual budget, it is $180,000.
And to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples, I'd have to do that exercise for each one of those other entities as well. Like Portland Police, they're understaffed by 100 officers. Florence, I'm not sure where they're staffing at. So it was, for the exercise, it was, I guess, easier to use their allocated amount versus to their budgeted amount versus trying to guess how many vacancies each agency had at the time and go through it that way.
Okay.
Chief, what's the third page? This one? Or is that not yours?
That, we'll be coming to that, that's part of the dispatch
Oh, sorry.
comparison. So we'll be
Sorry.
coming to that in just a
I
minute.
didn't know what all handouts you got. so-
Sorry, jumped the gun.
Oh, it's fine.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I don't think anyone besides maybe Chester dates back this far, but probably 11 or 12 years ago, there was a consultant hired because of the same problem with the police radio coverage. And I guess, you know, I was very deeply involved in that at the time, city manager. And I guess these are the kinds of things that I don't expect you to have an answer for, but they're the kinds of things that would bother anyone with a long-term memory is, why are we doing this again? Why didn't it work 11 years ago? why didn't that fix work? And my memory is that was around $120,000 that was spent back then to improve the system to supposedly make it work. So I don't know.
So I'm a little bit familiar with the work that was done back then. I didn't know the ticket item or the cost on that.
Yeah, I'm not positive of it. That's
Yeah.
just rolling in my
Right.
head.
What has happened from that point to where we're at now was the federal, the FCC did the narrow banding of police frequencies, or well, all frequencies. Which basically, I'm trying to figure out a way to explain it because it basically halves, they cram twice as many frequencies into the same spectrum.
That's a good way of putting it.
Which doesn't allow for very much variance.
Right.
That before the narrow banding occurred, so you had some
Well, you needed new equipment.
slop over, that kind of stuff, and then the new equipment, where those, because of the narrow banding, there's a lot more interference, or not, maybe not interference, but the communication issues exist because of our topography. Because of the narrow banding had a lot to do with that. It didn't make it as robust. Basically, it degraded our signal system by narrow banding, which was required by FCC. We didn't have a choice on that.
Thank you.
And that $75,000, I'll be honest with you, that is just a shot in the dark. It could be, I don't suspect it to be very much less than that, and it could be much more than that. We're hoping the study that is currently being done by the Sheriff's Office contractor through, that was a grant through Department of Homeland Security. What we're expecting to see in the report, and it's not due to us until June, obviously a little late for budget considerations to get before the Budget Committee and stuff, but we're hoping to get a good, better, and best solution, and whatever those particular costs are for each of those resolved. That's what we're looking for. So.
Thank you.
Okay. There was a proposal or an idea that was brought to my attention that we wanted to address a little bit by Mr. Ward, and I'm going to let him fill in the blanks if I foul it up too much. But the idea was to look at the possibility of using a camera system with our dispatch, wherein that going down at least 101, whether they're installed or that we could use somebody else's, of being able to tie into those camera feeds into the dispatch and to use those as both as an opportunity to track what is taking place and also to investigate should there be something that an incident occurs and we need to investigate that. So he brought that to my attention. We have not been able to put together any costs associated with that, so I'm not prepared to discuss that, but I did want to have the chief address the advantages that he sees in having that service, and then also Tony Lasoya, he's still here, good, Tony Lasoya from our IT department to address just kind of the overall picture of what it takes to be able to install that type of service. Chief?
So,
Tony, come on up.
So having video cameras along 101 would be great as far as being able to monitor certain particular areas for traffic problems through that Nell Scott area in particular that tends to jam up more often than not. And on the very north end of town around the Neotsu, East Devils Lake interchange, and then have cameras along 101. Would also help if we were looking for somebody, but it'd be after the fact. It's kind of like having a video security in your store. It offers two things: a deterrent, visible deterrent, because cameras may be out there, maybe some People wouldn't act as bad as sometimes they do if cameras aren't there, but more importantly, it's an investigative tool after the fact. That's where a lot of the video surveillance type systems come into play at. So I think Tony has done a little bit of work on what that might look like.
So I've done a little bit of research on this, and from an IT perspective, the first thing you ask is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? I think the chief kind of went over that. From a technical perspective, the costing for this kind of project goes from somewhat expensive to outrageously expensive. So there's a lot of questions that need to be asked, and starting with, what are we trying to do? Do we want real-time video? Do we want snapshots? Where do we want to store the video? What quality of video do we want? What kind of transport do we want to use? Do we want to try to put in a wireless infrastructure for the city, which then puts us on the outrageously expensive side of it? Do we want to use 4G, which will at some point get us to outrageously expensive for the data plans? Or do we want to try to partner with one of our service providers to provide internet transport, IP-based transport? Then there's the whole question of storage. We're going to have to build a storage infrastructure to store the video. How long do you store the video? What are the privacy concerns of storing that video? Do you store it in the cloud? Do you store it on premise? How do you search all this video that you're going to be accumulating? So those are some of the issues that I uncovered in just doing some research, and they've all been answered by other municipalities. I mean, Portland has 600 cameras. So it has been done, and it can be done. It just comes down to how much do you want to spend to do it, and is it worth the cost? And that's not for me to answer. So that's what I have. And what I think we should do, I think the chief and I, if we're going to explore this, should go talk to some of the municipalities that have already done this and get an understanding of what they did to put this in place. I think that would be the first step. So.
Well, between now and when you adopt the budget, we'll at least be able to put some preliminary numbers together so that if you wanted to proceed with this, it will take longer than just the 3 weeks or 4 weeks we have before the budget adoption. But I believe we can at least get some preliminary numbers so that if you would want to go forward with this, we would be able to put something into the budget.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Chief, does the police department have a direct feed into the dispatch center somewhere? The cameras that Oregon State operates within the city limits? I think we've got a couple of cameras right at the intersection of, what is that, on the north end, going to the casino?
Those are ODOT cameras, and we've got access to the ODOT cameras just like everyone else does off of the ODOT.
Oh, just off the website? I mean,
right,
you don't have a feed. You don't have a feed in there. Okay.
Is it true that we have cameras already installed in the city limits for surveillance purposes?
Does the police department?
Correct. No. Did we not install surveillance cameras at the skate park?
Well, yes and no. We do have a camera that we have rotated throughout our different parks, and it has been used at the skate park, but it's not permanently mounted there.
It is currently there.
I don't know if it's currently there or if it's somewhere else. I'd have to check and find that out.
What information, with the police or without the police, has been gained from that at all?
I will have. Well, I can tell you for perhaps maybe the most important, and how it was successful. We have had an individual that was using the city's trash cans to unload human waste from their RV in large bags of it, and we were able to use that to identify who that was and get that corrected. As I understand it from our Parks Department, there's been 2 or 3 occasions where we have been able to identify something that has taken place.
The point is that how much
benefit could we get from having that, you know?
That is ultimately the
Cost.
question.
What was it? Cost over financial
Cost-benefit
return?
analysis.
Right.
Cost-benefit analysis.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, in fairness to Mr. Ward, who's quiet tonight for some reason.
Sitting next to me.
That must be it. But the discussion, as I recall it, was really around a couple of problems. One, tough to get officers. So we're well below budget of number of officers. And the train-up time to get these folks. And a combination of and I apologize, but, you know, a new police building and stuff. We're looking into the future and saying, what are the costs of all these things, and is that how you're going to police in the future? So quite frankly, you know, it was one of Mr. Ward's crazy ideas. So what about cameras? You know, trying to somehow...
Don't try to flatter me.
But it, you know, it just, to throw it out and say, you know, we know places all over the world use these, but we were trying to come up with a way that 3 officers trying to cover 101, 7.5 miles, and not be in the right place at the right time. And also, you know, maybe catch speeders, you know, through this vehicle. So it was a brainy idea to throw out. I don't know that it's not workable yet, but it sure beats when you start doing this $160,000 per officer every year, and additional costs, and now add the car and everything else. You know, it's worth looking at, and that's, quite frankly, I think what he was doing.
And I am in opposition.
Yet to be, you know, proposed, but
And that's fine.
But that's really where it was trying to, the problems, I think Tony said it right, what problem are you trying to solve? And this isn't temporary on being low on officers. The whole state is, you know, bleeding officers. So I see nothing that's going to turn that around. So trying to think of another way to still provide a public service protection to the citizens. That's all. So
I remember, thank you. I also remember our speed signs that we had that would indicate speeding, that we had analysis done, that nothing was done from it because it wasn't instant. So I'm aware of all these things. And also, what about this? How about that? What are we going to do? So as pro, you can be as anti, you know. No?
Like,
I'm not at all. I want to hear all of this stuff.
I know you do. You seem to be more than willing, and that's great. Because, you know, so far all we've heard is words.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we've known other people that are, you know, throw out adjectives about the amount of money that.
Well,
I'm sure Tony can come up with something.
As with all of the discussions we have tonight, we will be bringing the information we can gather. Whether it's coming from all of you or one of you, we will be bringing it back, and then you can make your decisions based on the information we get.
Absolutely. That's why we're all here. Mr. Norakis.
Chief, is the only disadvantage cost? Are there other disadvantages to a system such as this?
Well, again, I think we'd have to ask ourselves, what is it that we want to accomplish? And if we're just wanting more eyes out along the roadway, I mean, cameras are a great tool for that. Cameras not necessarily, we can't really take a whole lot of enforcement action, direct enforcement action, because of what we see on cameras. I mean, if we see somebody going through one camera and then we time it going through another camera, we can't cite the person for speeding because we knew that they had to be speeding to get from camera A to camera B. If that's what you're looking for, then that's not going to be the answer.
Could we look at speed camera traps?
No, and here's why. So we did check after our last discussion.
I remember asking before.
Yeah, after our last discussion, because we do have the radar speed limit signs that we use, and the question was, can we use those to issue tickets?
Not those. I know those are not capable of.
No, no, no,
purchasing
it's
new
not a
ones.
capability question. It's a legal question from the state. The state allows only about 6 cities to give tickets from any kind of camera. And so in order to be able to give a ticket from a camera, you'd have to change the state law. Now, I do know of one community that is proceeding with this, but it will be used to give warnings and not tickets because they're not permitted by the state.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to point out that this type of a camera system is how they caught the Boston Marathon bomber. When we're unfortunate in a way to have Highway 101 because it cuts right through our town, and it's busy and it's an artery and it's kind of nasty. But it is to an advantage that we have just that one artery when you're trying to track what's happening and to have some idea what's going on in the south end if you happen to be in the north end. And we have a resource, and that's the dispatch center that basically sit all through the night doing dispatch. So you've got labor there that can be diverted. And when I was doing the research and looking at different police stations, a lot of them had dispatch right there, and then they had a big, maybe 30 or 40 screens of everything that was happening around them. To me, that system makes sense, particularly you got a one-time capital expense, but that will stay the same. You won't have to repurchase it every year, but the ability to do a police officer's work and being 2 places at once, you'll enjoy that savings through years to come. So, we don't have a lot of policemen. We're struggling, and maybe it's too expensive. Maybe it's not viable. But I think it's worth looking into because it has been very viable for a lot of other police stations. And I don't know why we would want anything less in our police station than the best police stations would have. That's where we want to be. And I hadn't said anything. I'm done. It would also frankly, be nice to have a camera here in City Hall. That might be nice. Might be nice to have a camera in the library in case something happened. Yes, there we go. Hook it in. Yeah. So, I rest my case. Well, I kind of rest my case. I reserve the right to attack again.
Are there other questions pertaining to the police budget?
Yes. We recently approved a purchase order for 2 vehicles on the city council level, and now I see another amount. Is this for an additional 2 vehicles?
It's for a replacement of 2 vehicles.
So
we are
maybe
on
4 new vehicles within 6 months?
Within...
Replacing 4 vehicles.
Yes.
So, and not an addition, it was 1 addition, 1 replacement, and 2 now proposed replacements, just to be clear.
Chief, will you mention what we use to determine the replacement?
So generally, those cars are good for about 5 years, 100,000 miles. This current budget cycle, the ones that you just recently approved you are correct, it was 1 replacement and 1 new vehicle. These 2 vehicles will be replacement vehicles. It won't add anything to the fleet.
Will they be sedans or will they be the new SUVs?
The SUVs.
I know the officers really like that.
I could not bring another sedan here.
Ever again. He'll lit you.
Yeah. We've got one sedan.
If I have to get down in that car ever again, I'll be the last time.
We've got 1 sedan that I've got 1 person driving the heck out of, just rack up the miles so we can get rid of it. Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
I tried to give that away.
I know.
Yes. Ron, last year, you gave us a nice little list of all the automobiles by...
Yes, sir. You want an update?
You might as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's asking for it.
I think I already have that, but forgot to bring that with me.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
I might be in the wrong year, but when will we be talking about the police building?
Okay, I can address that one. We did not include the police building into the budget for this year because the determination has not been made as to the size and the expense of that building. So we didn't put it in there because we are lacking some information. As that goes forward, then we'll be able to make the budget adjustment. For those of you that are not on the city council, so you're familiar with this, the city is currently considering a new police building that will be located near our existing police building. The estimates that we have based on a current design, not an architectural design, but a preliminary design, is between $10 to $11 million. We have had the go-ahead from the City Council to begin looking, meeting with architects, and we have those interviews set up for Thursday?
Yes, this Thursday.
Thursday, and also an owner's representative to represent us during the construction. We'll be interviewing 3 firms. Part of the outreach program that will be part of this, or that will be a part of the ultimate architectural design, will be to meet with the City Council on at least 2 and probably more occasions on that to discuss the nature of the building, the design of the building, the purpose of the building, the phases of the building, and so forth. And ultimately that will go forward. We are proposing to use, and we'll come to this in a little bit later, we're proposing to use the transient room tax that is part of the facilities capital plan as the way to pay off the debt associated with that building, so that we do not have to ask our residents for any kind of property tax, either guarantee or increase. There's much that is left to be done with this, and so it was a little too preliminary to try to put this into the budget. Any other questions pertaining to the
Yes.
police? Yes, sir.
You have $28,000 for the estimated budget for the 2016-17 estimate, and then you increase it, or you say you include funds, $23,000, but that's not in addition to the estimated of last year. If you were going to add that, I read that they were there last year. Is that because they weren't there the full part of last year? And it says person.
Are you talking in the salaries?
The TCB person, the contracted services. Is it one person that will only be one person? And did the police have interactions with this? Did they pick who it was, or best fit, or?
Chief, you'll have to answer
Yes,
that.
so
You know
we
what I mean?
contract with TCB Security. I have met with the owner, Mike Goff, and we sat down some parameters and stuff, so I shared with him what it was that I needed in that personnel, and he provided me with a person with that best fit. So it's one person.
One person.
Yeah.
So that other people know they are DPSST certified, or not?
No, they're not.
They're not?
Because they're not an
Background
employee.
clearance,
They're not a
or-
police employee. They are a contract staff through TCB Security.
Would they have the same, I don't know, background clearance? I mean, because you're having a lot of personal information for our city
So,
residents for somebody
Be a
that's
security
not.
officer, you do have to go through a DPSST certification
That's
for
what
a
I-
security officer.
That's what I asked.
I'm sorry, I thought you meant police DPSST.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yes, they've
Okay.
gone through that background.
Thank you, because that would
I'm
put
sorry.
everybody kind
I
of at ease.
misunderstood
It's
where
all
you
right.
went. No, that's okay.
And the second, well, though I have another one. The Citizens Police Academy, we're going to do again, even though we incurred 404 hours of overtime.
Could you talk more about that? Because,
That's a lot of overtime.
yeah.
Okay. So the Citizens Police Academy is a 10-week Citizens Academy. We'll probably have about 16 to 18 participants. I believe a couple of invitations may be going out to our current city council members here shortly. And it's a community outreach education process to where citizens kind of learn about the police department specifically, about state law, kind of put aside the myths of CSI television shows that we can't get DNA results in an hour, and kind of put into just an educational format on their police department, the criminal justice system, and what it is that we do day in and day out. Not only includes police department, it also includes our dispatch center, the court system, district attorney's office, that whole global local criminal justice system.
In an effort to reduce overtime costs that we pay, I know the Oregon Coast Community College often has people, residents, non-educators, instruct classes. Could it be possible that something like you're doing be held there and be funded through that community college?
So we do hold it at community college, and they're very gracious in allowing us free space to do those classes.
Cool.
Some of the instructors that come in don't charge. If they're from the district attorney's office, it's not a charge for them. So we tried to, we're cost conscious. We try to save costs where we can, but sometimes instruction is what it is. And I think it's a very worthwhile and very valuable for the citizens to engage with the officers that are actually serving them. So there is a cost to that.
I have made a note to bring back what the dollar amount is for the overtime so that you'll have that information.
Yeah, for me, I heard about it before and rave reviews, and again, Chief, as you described it, I agree. For me, it's just what shocked me was the overtime hours, and trying actually to equate that to the actual cost. And again, with any alternative instruction that would be lower would be great. But
and then along, I would assume that it would have more overtime costs in this cadet program, or no?
I don't think so. There would be a little bit of training cost, but I don't believe that there would be overtime associated with this.
And this is the 18 to 21?
It'd be the 18 to 21. Mm-hmm.
Is there going to be a vetting process for the principal, since there's only 2 positions?
Absolutely, yeah. There'll be an application, world board process, background check.
Yes, sir.
Chief, on page 23, we've got $3,500 proposed for DARE supplies.
Yes.
I was under the impression that the DARE program had expired.
We're hoping to get that DARE officer back in the schools this fall.
Okay, thank you.
And on page 23, we have a $75,000 for other equipment.
That's the radio.
Oh, I knew that. I'm sorry. I did know that.
Okay. Any other questions regarding police? The other item I'd really like to cover tonight, if you're okay with this, is dispatch.
I'll do dispatch and call it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the dispatch, the total the operational budget of dispatch is $907,355, which is 1.3% or just above $12,000 less than 2017, fiscal year 2017. It's essentially the same as last year. There's a couple features that I'll let the chief explain a little bit on as they pertain to text to 911 and vacation rental dwellings. But before we get into that, the third sheet that was discussed in the handout, excuse me, is a comparison. We're often asked about the cost of contracting this service versus having it in-house. One of the concerns that we've expressed, or at least I have over the last 2 years, is that there really is not a lot of competition when you contract a service, and this service in particular. And so that if you were to contract the service, you would then be subject to whatever the increase would be, and it would be very difficult to ever get your dispatch back. So the chief has looked at the cost of other police departments and what increases they have seen that are both for police departments that have their own service and those that are contracted. So with that, I'll turn it over to the chief and let him discuss those.
So most of the spreadsheet deals with the costs that agencies have seen that contract with Willamette Valley Communication Center. This is kind of a 10-year look back. Obviously, some agencies have dropped out, other agencies have joined. And I haven't been able to figure out the rhyme or reason for the different percentage increases as you go down each of the departments. I don't know if it's by population, by calls for service. I'm not sure what formula they used. It ranges anywhere from 166% increase to 26.59. There's a couple of 12.93, but they don't have the 10-year look. They've got the last 2 or 3 years, particularly Newport Police and Lincoln County Sheriff's Office.
I was trying to find that number, that 792,000. Is that the actual budget of 2015, right? Just making sure.
Yeah, that's the actual. So during that same 10-year period, our costs have gone up 23.65%. During that same 3-year period, I'm sorry, within the 10-year period. And then during the last 3 years, that Newport and Lincoln County Sheriff's Office went to WVCC. Their increases were 12.7 and 12.93. Ours was 2.67 during that same time period. And taking a look at a couple of the other agencies with their own dispatch center, Coos Bay, during the 10-year period has increased 27%, Astoria PD 26%, and our increase was 24% during that same time period. So,
what would be the cost of PERS employees over the same 10-year period?
Say that again.
We have increase of cost agencies with own dispatch. We have 24% increase from 2006 2016, 27% and 26%. Right. In general, what are PERS employees from 2006 until today? Okay. What increase is it comparatively?
We'll get that information.
You know, as something to base it off against.
Okay.
I have some questions regarding the resources from page.
Mr. Chair, before we leave this.
Oh, sure.
Seem to recall, correct me if I'm wrong, please, is that we had a discussion about this during the last budget cycle.
We did.
And it wasn't a question about money. My impression was the deciding factor is whether we wanted to keep it in-house or not, regardless of price. And I don't recall. If anybody can correct me on that, I'd appreciate it. But it might be worth asking them how much it would cost, if that's what you want to do or consider. Asking the company.
Moving it to Salem, you mean?
Yeah, or wherever.
What are the costs?
That's the only option.
Yeah,
that's what he means by it's limited.
Well, and part of that, I have called 911, and it has gone to Salem inside city limits, so that anytime I call 911, I only call the 3636 number because it will take minutes over there to transfer. I have to wait and then get connected to Lincoln City.
Depending on what cell tower you happen to hit at the time, if you're using
within city limits,
yes,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it goes there sometimes already, and I don't want 3 minutes later.
What service do you want?
Well, absolutely.
I mean, the service that you get here locally.
Right.
And that's, and what value do you put in the local service versus somebody else doing it?
Is there a discussion to not have dispatch? Did I miss something?
There has been in the past. There has been in the past question.
No.
Good. Good, then I don't have to.
Hey, Riley, you going to cut out dispatch? No. Oh, okay. Well, cool. No, I just want to see it.
There's been discussions in the past, and that was the purpose of this.
Oh, no.
So you could actually see what the cost.
I was just looking for other.
Control is.
Yeah, I just want to see what PERS employees' costs have been in the last 10 years. It has nothing to do with cutting it out. Sorry. Or removing it. No. Moving it? No, I do not want to move it.
I did want to have the chief mention the text to 911 service and how we are using dispatch as it pertains to vacation rental dwellings.
So right now, if somebody's got a complaint on a vacation rental, they call one number. That's our non-emergency dispatch number of 541-994-3636. And then we will figure out where that call needs to go, which property management firm, which VRD owner, which, if it requires an immediate police response, we'll let the trained people figure that one out, so the citizen doesn't have to.
Absolutely.
And that's occurring now, Chief?
Yes. However, there have been some of the cards that have been sent out that had the phone numbers of the management company for that. But yes, it is in place now.
This will all be able to be tracked. Because I know in years past, we couldn't know the VRD calls because it would go to the property manager, and then it would go to the homeowner, and then maybe the police would hurt. So now we will be able to have verifiable data.
Yes, sir.
I was
To
just,
the extent
Of what is reported.
of what is reported.
right.
Yes.
I was going to,
Absolutely.
okay. I was going to bring that up, that the 11 cards that we received at my household all have the management company phone number. And I went, I don't think so. And that's about when I had that conversation with you about, well, isn't that the number, the police non-emergency number? And it
Yeah, we
was
ran into a
supposed to
bit of
be.
a timing issue, so that is being corrected.
So my issues didn't go to the police, I should say.
Okay.
So you won't have that count.
Chairman?
I'll add one.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Just in the spirit of clarification, because I don't understand it, but your question to staff to pursue the PERS increases in regard to dispatch?
It shows, this graph shows,
No, this chart with all the numbers.
on this bottom left, 24%, 27%, and 26% increase of cost of payroll for dispatch.
Okay.
Who are PERS employees?
Let's assume they're all PERS employees.
Okay.
So why do you then?
To see if generally costs associated for payroll over the last 10 years has also increased 25%. Has payroll for city workers increased 25% in the last 10 years? It's just informational. It has nothing to do with reducing or increasing budget. As a comparative to other city employees, is that the trend for 10 years for payroll to increase a quarter, 25%. I could be missaying it also.
One, I'm always looking, it's easy for us from this dais to flip stuff to staff. So part of my resistance is he's been taking a lot of notes for things to bring back.
Sure.
And of course, Ron doesn't have anything else to do, so, but in the spirit of it, I'm really trying to figure out, does it really matter? Information is interesting, but does it matter to this process?
What does this
The other is, I think I heard from Debbie that depending on how many level 1s or 2s I have in my city, affects how much, so if, pick on somebody, if the dispatch center has a lot of tier 1, tier 2, they could be higher than we are in our dispatch center, simply because we have a lot of turnover of dispatchers.
Sure. Is it too much to ask what was payroll costs 10 years ago and compare it to now?
I can bring you that out.
I mean, it's not.
Well, I know we can, I'm just,
To see, why would we be provided with this 24% increase over the last 10 years? Why am I given this information? And what do I have it to base against?
don't read it.
Oh, don't read it. So if I may ask a few more questions. In our resources, page 7 of the line item, we have 911 tax allocation and fire dispatching for a total of $70,000 roughly. I don't see those in dispatches line item either. So I was wondering where 911 tax allocation goes and what is fire dispatching. And that's
Talking about revenues?
page 7, and resources.
Okay, just a little bit of discussion on the general fund and how it works, and I think this may be able to answer your question. So the 911 tax allocation, as with all other general fund resources, revenues, come into the general fund and then are dispersed from there.
Great.
So there's not a direct tie to that.
Okay, perfect. As addition to the fire dispatching?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions on dispatch?
I was going to mention the text to 911.
Yes, please, this is great.
That's a
This
new
is very
program. New program that Oregon Emergency Management, or OEM, is kind of rolling out, and I think we'll be the 6th or 7th law enforcement agency or dispatch center in the state of Oregon to provide text to 911 services. There are times where picking up the phone and saying help is not very conducive to the situation at hand. So it's another alternative to reach the dispatch center.
That's awesome.
So,
That's awesome.
the cost was very minimal for the protection of our citizens, so we went ahead with that project.
Wonderful.
Is that likely to have the same kind of challenge that Riley ran into a couple of times, where it's going to end up in Salem, but they're going to have to figure out via text message that it really isn't supposed to be in Salem?
They'll be,
We'll find
they'll
out.
be using a cell phone device, so those text messages will be forwarded to us, just as well as those 911 calls for service.
How will they know that? With a 911 call, I assume you're having a conversation with somebody and you say, oh, I'm in Lincoln City, and they go, well, oh, crud, it's not supposed to go to us, but with a text, how are they going to know?
It may take a little bit.
Just curious.
How will the police department advertise this, let people know that it's available?
When we implement it, we'll roll it out. We'll do a publicity campaign on it and stuff, but.
That's what I wanted.
Right,
That's
yep.
what I was.
If I tell 10 people, and you tell 10 people, and you tell 10 people, and you.
Maybe we'll text it out.
Hey.
Will that work for text to
Okay.
ID complaints as well?
So the next,
So we will still prefer the voice method over the text method. It's just another alternative to get to the 911 center.
Thank you very much. We will stop here. We have comments from Budget Committee members. Anybody? Great job. Good job, I think. You guys are great. And our next scheduled meeting?
In 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks?
At 6 PM.
6 p.m.?
Can we do it at 5?
So be the
Let me ask you a question. Since we no longer need to have the urban renewal meeting, would you like to start this meeting at 5 or wait till 6?
Do we need to make a motion?
That would be great.
I would make a motion to start it at 5 o'clock on the 1st.
Would be helpful to me if it was 5:30.
Debbie.
Coming from Newport.
I have a question.
Yes?
What about the, what did we advertise for the revenue sharing? 5 or 6?
Oh.
We only advertise the first budget committee, and thereafter, it's just determined in the meeting, and we don't have to publish future ones.
I will wait. I will restate it. What about 5:30?
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor of starting the next meeting at 5:30? Aye. Aye. All opposed? Wonderful. Great job, everyone. We are adjourned.
Lights are off.